Hello, 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 everyone. This is Dr. Garrett Smith, also known as the nutrition detective around these here YouTube parts. And we have quite the barn burner of an episode for you today. A lot of people, both supporters and detractors of mine, are anxiously awaiting this episode. So hi, everybody. And we get to go into it today. And I want everyone to know here that my ultimate interest is in your own personal good. And you'll get to see that today. And I really, really, really want to give a bunch of people proper warning about what they may be doing to themselves in their newfound zeal for calcium supplementation. It may not end as they hope. So let's get into it. So I'm going to go into the document that I made that Joe has shared with the chat, and it will be put as a comment below in the info box. This is a link to a Google Doc I made. It's got all my references in it, and it's got an outline of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to try to follow it pretty well. Well, John said, calcium schmalcium. Well, we're gonna talk about this, John. We're gonna talk about how we're getting into my mea culpa. What does mea culpa mean? And I did a mea culpa in the Love Your Liver network about flush niacin and how I originally thought all niacin was the same, and I thought it was a problem for the liver. And I realized that what I was looking at was not flush niacin. I was thinking about niacinamide. And so I changed my stance. I have changed my stance over the years on the major things, including vitamin D supplements. I have changed my stance on vitamin A vitamin A. I used to give vitamin A up to 30,000 units a day and give liver pills and tell people to eat all sorts of high carotenoid foods. And I used to eat tons of eggs and all that stuff. I changed my mind on all that. Okay. So vitamin D, vitamin A, flush niacin, not any other form of niacin. And now today, we get to talk about calcium and how my zeal for helping to fix people by fixing the excess calcium in their system may have caused me to overshoot. And some people over the years became calcium deficient. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. It could happen. And that we're going to fix it now. And we're going to do it the right way, not the way that could put people 6 feet under. Okay. Oh, the word deficient didn't come through. Okay. Well, we'll figure it out, Joe. But yeah, some people may have become calcium deficient over the years, and we're going to hit on that. So we went over the mea culpa. So for those of you who are here and you have gotten great results on this program, and maybe you got great results in the beginning, but things kind of crept up on you over time, certain new things or other things kind of crept up on you over time. Well, we built a reputation, as I said before, by getting excess calcium problems out of the body, typically caused by vitamin D supplements and vitamin A toxicity. And I do believe copper toxicity contributes to this. So being that one of my sayings is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, I didn't for a long time think there was a problem to fix. Okay, I made a mistake. Some people out there believe that I should be perfect and I should have every potential issue in this like paradigm changing approach already sorted out. Well, I don't. I apologize. I am not perfect. If you believe I should be perfect, I don't know who you think I am, but I am a human and I'm coming up with this. And these things, these calcium deficiencies, if they are happening, are coming on over years. What did I used to talk about was the hardest thing about figuring out vitamin A toxicity? It was the fact that it took so long to happen. Okay, well, what about potentially if we're not eating enough calcium, the calcium deficiency may have taken years to come on. And so it was hard to catch, especially if I was biased because I was seeing results from fixing excess calcium problems. Okay, so here is the statement that I have never swayed from. Calcium is and has always been necessary in the body, right? When I teach people about hair testing, there is an optimal level of calcium. We've never said that people don't need calcium. Okay, that's not what I teach. So, as this process, I am at about 7 years of doing this. In September, I will be at 7 years of doing low vitamin A and helping people with this approach. So as this has evolved over the last 7 years, it appears that calcium deficiency in some, not all people, has become a legitimate issue. I'm admitting it. Okay. Common things with the diet we choose to avoid vitamin A. Low vitamin A foods are very commonly low in calcium. This is true. You can go look at it. The typical foods that people are eating are low in calcium, and they may be, as a whole diet framework, that could be an issue. It is becoming an issue in some people, okay? High fiber diets, which many people are doing here, can reduce calcium absorption. That only adds to this. And then high sodium intakes, which lots of people do everywhere, can antagonize calcium. So we have things that we're doing in this approach that can create calcium issues, okay? So again, I've said I've never been against getting calcium from foods, and I've had people at times specifically eat high calcium foods to test out and see if they need more calcium, or if they told me they really feel better when they eat some dairy, I'd be like, okay, we probably have a calcium deficiency and we should probably work on that. I have done that. The other thing is as opposed to swinging to the other side, I have always been very hesitant about calcium supplements. And I am going to show you an obscene amount of research as to why, if you're out there taking calcium supplements, particularly calcium carbonate, you might want to heavily reconsider that. Okay? I mean, you're really just taking limestone that they ground up and gave you in a pill. So our goal now, we are going to fix this oversight. We're going to resolve calcium deficiencies in people who have it, and we are going to continue helping people heal even better moving forward. So if this was a missing piece, think about this. If we've been helping people get over issues that nobody else really does on a regular basis, and we simply fix one hole in our approach, we plug that hole. Can you imagine how much better this is going to get? The people who were having issues and we couldn't figure out why, some of them may be completely fixed by this. That's amazing. Okay. Now, I want to go into RBTI, my RBTI experience, because some of the people out there seem to be heading into a very similar to RBTI approach. RBTI. Now, I'm not suggesting you follow this at all. RBTI means REAMS, R-E-A-M-S, biological theory of ionization. Okay, RBTI. This group believes that all human health is tied to a balance of 6 different calciums in the body. They don't really use anything else. They use 6 different calciums, and water or lemon water and or sweetened lemon water. It's interesting that they use lemon because lemon would kind of be citric acid. It would kind of be a decalcifier. Okay. I'm very familiar with this. Matt Stone, I learned about RBTI from Matt Stone. Some of you remember Matt Stone from 180 Degree Health. He's a buddy of mine. We actually talked this weekend. I wanted to talk to him about RBTI and see how he's doing. Good news, he's going to come on one of my live streams soon. Haven't decided on a date yet, but he wants to come and give everybody his update on vitamin A. Okay. We both really tried it out, and people at 180 Degree Health really tried it out. Everyone there abandoned it. Everyone there quit it. Now, Matt Stone and I both 7, Matt may even be like at 8 years. We've both stuck with low vitamin A. Okay. I actually talked to Matt and I said, some of his stuff might be calcium deficiency. And he said, I always thought that the diet was a bit calcium deficient, and I wondered if that could become an issue. Other people have wondered if this could become an issue too. Okay. So maybe it has been. I want to go over one of the things that got everybody to jump on RBTI was a woman that Matt knew who had cancer, and she went to, as you'll see down here, she went to Challen Wakehoff's hometown and had him, sorry, did that just zoom in on me? Yeah, it did. This camera, man. If I put my hands up too long, it'll just change the zoom. Anyway, so this woman went to Challen's hometown to directly work with him. Challen Wakehoff was the leader in RBTI in this country. He was the main practitioner. He taught other practitioners. It was said that, as I said below here, he had perfect health and perfect RBTI test numbers. So this woman goes to him with cancer, and they're doing very, very strict RBTI. Cancer seemed to disappear. This might be called a honeymoon phase. Okay. However, over time, the problem came back, and if she slipped up on the program at all, and I want you to understand how compulsive this program is. You would have to either drink water or lemon water or sweetened lemon water and alternate them sometimes, the different ones, every half hour for 8 hours a day. And then you had to take the right pills, and you had to monitor your saliva pH, you had to monitor your urine pH. It was obnoxious. It was the most obnoxious health approach I'd ever seen. And I consulted with Challen when I thought this was the thing. I consulted with Challen on my own clients. I'd have they were patients back then. Patients would come in, I'd send them to the bathroom to get a urine sample, and I'd do their saliva pH, and we would do the other analysis in the office. Okay, wait. Mikey, did you do RBTI? Were you in that group? I'm very interested. No, you didn't do RBTI. Okay, so Mikey didn't do RBTI, but I want to read to you, Joe, you may want to highlight these comments. Mikey's experience on calcium. He was very toxic. He says, I was very toxic at the time, and it was before finding Grant and Garrett's work. Nothing was a better example of duration paradox as this. Very quick fix with a slow downfall. I'm going to show you this in the research. Mikey said, I've thought about giving a detailed experience on Love Your Liver, but it was when I was very toxic, so I don't know if it's relevant. Here's what he said. Talk about a honeymoon phase. Literally every issue fixed instantly, then really bad about 8 months later. I couldn't even get off of it. I had to wean off. We're going to go over this. This is all in the research. You folks who are doing like mega dosing calcium and you're having your honeymoon phase and you think, how could I be so wrong about calcium? It's fixing everything. Everything's going away and I feel so amazing. You're hearing somebody else who's done it and they just said 8 months. That may sound like a similar amount of time for some of you. Okay. Mikey said it fixed. Oh, so he said he didn't do RBTI. He said just me taking calcium supplements. It fixed every issue head to toe, and I literally went crazy why it helped. This is happening. Like, this is literally happening. People are going literally crazy about how much it's helping them. So he said very slow downfall. So I think if people who are less toxic, it'll be even slower. What is likely going on, especially in people who are taking calcium supplements that are alkaline, like calcium carbonate, is there is a problem with calcium accumulation going on, which, just think about it. So let's say some people do LYL for a long time and we fix these excess calcium problems. So they don't have decades worth of calcium stored in their system. So then they start calcium supplements and they're going to have a longer, just like Mikey's saying, they're going to have a longer time until the crash. And then the other thing that no one is talking about is that metabolic alkalosis takes a long time it's very insidious. So like what Mikey's saying, it was a very slow downfall. I'm going to show you stuff about metabolic alkalosis and how this is a slow thing. And metabolic alkalosis long-term is difficult to fix. Mikey's saying, so with me, 8 months, with other people, 2 years. It all depends on, Mikey, it all depends. What kind of doses were you taking, Mikey, through your little process? I don't mean little process, but through your process. What type of calcium and what amounts of calcium were you taking? I had no idea Mikey was going to come on and say this. This is pretty wild. I'll let Mikey answer that while I go through this. So as you've heard Mikey say, it seemed to fix many things quickly at the start, what we call the honeymoon phase, when everything seems so wonderful. There's no problems, it's only wonderful. What did Mikey say? Problems seem to creep back over time, even while doing RBTI. Sound familiar? And as I said before, stopping this OCD type program led to previous problems coming back worse than before. A very bad sign indicative of really pure symptom suppression. Okay. Mikey said he took like, well, at his peak, it sounds like he took 250 milligrams every few hours. Are you saying at first, Mikey, you needed 1 capsule and it lasted you 2 days, and then you needed 2 capsules and then 3, and then like 2 times the RDA? Well, the RDA is something, some different sources are saying different RDAs, but it could be anywhere from about 1,000 to 1,200 to 1,500, depending upon which source you're looking at and which year you're talking about the RDA. So he says, I think it was this type of calcium from calcified seaweed. Oh, is that calcium alginate? That might be calcium alginate. Anyway, so 2 times the RDA could be anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of calcium. The folks who have jumped on the calcium fixes everything train are commonly around there. This sounds so eerily familiar. So, again, folks, you're getting warned by somebody who has done it. And as I said, very few people still do this approach. You can go and try to search for forums on RBTI on the internet, and you'll find that there's like 5 people making comments on it. It didn't work. We'll get into zeolite a little bit. So again, they are monitoring pH in the saliva and urine because it's actually one of their concerns that if you're taking a bunch of calciums, your pH could get messed up. We're going to talk about that. So as I said, Challen, I consulted with him on my patients. He was the main RBTI practitioner and teacher out there. The guy who would teach people like over the phone. As I said before, he was said to be in perfect health with perfect RBTI test numbers over and over. Well, he died suddenly of a massive heart attack at age 70. This will make sense to you when you see the calcium supplementation research. Just pay attention here. They monitored pH, so they didn't screw up pH, but they're still taking calcium, and calcium still accumulates. Okay? So now, the law of unintended consequences. Let's look at this. What is the law of unintended consequences, and why is it important? Oh, and Mikey added, yeah, tiny doses fixed me, but then I needed more and more for it to work. We have already seen this happening. So Mikey, would you say you took your doses, your small doses, and it worked for a little while, days, a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then your symptoms would come back and you had to increase your dose to get your symptoms to go away again, and you just kept repeating this cycle? Does this sound true to you? We'll get his answer in a second. The law of unintended consequences refers to the idea that actions or decisions can have unforeseen and unintended consequences, often in ways that are not immediately apparent. This can occur because complex systems often have multiple interconnected parts, and a change in one part of the system can have ripple effects that are difficult to predict. As I've said before, you can fix one disease by changing something while you are creating another disease. I've always said this. Some of you are really going to be interested in like the 6 to 10 year research on calcium supplementation that I'm going to go over. So Mikey's saying, huge example of a duration paradox, but this is a long duration. Okay. And I think the amazingness of the results, which Mikey said happens, is making people blind to this fact. But anyway, so what if with, we'll go over CAC, Johnny. Don't worry. We'll go over coronary artery calcium score. Yes. But so what if people started taking lots of calcium supplements and they felt amazing, like amazing, all their stuff went away. And then 6, 10 years later, they're not around anymore. Boy, that would be an unintended consequence. So let's go through, let's keep going. So from the Indian Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism, calcium supplementation, why, which, and how? Let me find it. According to the Institute of Medicine, daily allowance for calcium ranges from 600 to 1300 milligrams in relation to age and gender. You're going to find that like when you start getting over, they're RDAing, you know, they're saying RDA is up to 1300 milligrams. And then you start to see the research and you're like, ooh, things can get shaky over 700, definitely over 1,000, and 1,400 is a real problem, but yet they make the RDA up to 1,300 milligrams. The Indian Council of Medical Research recommends 600 milligrams for both genders. Why do they need so much less? In the USA and Northern Europe, where we overdo things, more is better, right? The average daily intake of calcium is about 900 to 1,000 milligrams. And in South Asia and India, it is 400 to 500 milligrams. The only way that this happens is dairy. Which is why in America, where they want everybody to eat dairy, they make the RDA so high. Okay? So 400 to 500 milligrams a day. India says 600. This means that at both geographical areas, intake of calcium is, they're assuming, suboptimal in greater than 50% of the population. This also gives the impression that all these people require calcium supplementation. If this holds true, then it has huge financial and commercial implications. I did this highlight in a different color because it's very much like the studies on vitamin A, where I showed that people could be deficient in vitamin A and yet have no vitamin A deficiency symptoms. Now, wait, what is really high in milk? Vitamin A, vitamin D, and calcium. What is fortified in foods? Vitamin A, vitamin D, and calcium. Strange that there's these patterns. If more than half of the world's population is calcium deficient, then why do we not observe its consequences often? Where's the problems? So what I'm saying is, could our diet, oh geez, did it just zoom in again? How do I turn that off? Let me go look. No, it didn't. Okay. I saw the camera flash. I got to turn this thing off, man. Anyway, so let's see. Where were we? If more than half the world's population is calcium deficient, then why do we not observe its consequences often? Where are the problems? So maybe, okay, get this. The Love Your Liver diet, overall, the choices that people are making with the way I set up the Love Your Liver diet, are people getting less than 500 milligrams a day? Yes. Could it happen? Yes. But do we need the US RDA? Probably not, because other countries are doing okay with it. And these other countries are probably not supplementing vitamin D3 rat poison, and they're probably not supplementing or putting vitamin A in all their foods. So there's three main problems to the calcium thing. There's three main things that we need to address. Okay, first of all, could be a literal calcium deficiency in the diet. Okay, I'm admitting this. Yes. Second thing would be we need to minimize or avoid the things that cause calcium problems. Vitamin D3 rat poison, vitamin A toxicity, fixing copper toxicity. Now, what's the last thing? Now, I'm not going to talk about what we do for this, but we have actually figured out fixing calcium flow can fix a lot of problems. So let's say if calcium is not moving well from inside the cell to outside the cell or vice versa, if we can fix the calcium movement, that may fix a lot of the stuff. There may not be a deficiency. It may just be the calcium's not moving correctly, which is not fixed by dumping more and more calcium into the system. It may seem like it's fixed, but it's not fixing anything. It's going to eventually go bad, as Mikey has said. So Mikey added, somebody asked him, what did it fix for him? Steve RG2 said, what did it fix for you, Mikey? Mikey replied, I had literally loads of symptoms, like silly amounts, extremely sick, bedridden. It fixed energy. I don't know what DPDR is. Being out of breath, joints noticeably. He added, Japan has the lowest calcium RDA. Japan also has one of the lowest in terms of heart attacks / disease and strokes. What a coincidence. Mikey said Grant talks about calcium buffering retinoic acid in the body in his book. It might explain why it helps. Yes, the calcium may be helping at the start acid-base balance. But when you learn about acid rebound from taking calcium carbonate, then we get to reconsider. Hevar, I'll get to your super chat at the end. So that's, let me see. Was there anything else on this one? Oh, there's a lot on this one. Sorry. So I've been talking about calcium carbonate. So they're saying how? Calcium supplementation. Calcium carbonate is the least expensive, which is why they fortify foods with it, and requires the fewest tablets. However, it may cause constipation and bloating. Okay, if you take an oral antacid, you shut down your acid production, and you're not going to digest your food well. Okay, we are supposed to have stomach acid. Calcium tends to slow things down over time. So there may be some people who are saying calcium is fixing their constipation, but over time, an excess of calcium slows things down. Must be taken with meals for adequate absorption. Okay, so wait, if you're going to take an antacid like calcium carbonate with your meal, but you need stomach acid to digest your meal, but they're saying you need to take your calcium with your meal for optimal absorption, but you're going to shut down your ability to break down protein and absorb B12 if that's an issue, and to not get food poisoning, that's quite a payoff, right? Calcium citrate is often more expensive than calcium carbonate and requires more tablets to get the desired dose. Its absorption is not dependent on gastric acid and is less likely to cause GI side effects. For optimal absorption, the dose of calcium should not exceed 500 milligrams per dose, irrespective of calcium preparation, the type of calcium. For patients requiring more than 500 milligrams a day, the dose should be divided. Some of you who are getting into crazy high doses, there's no way you're even splitting it up enough. Okay. Let us remember this. All nutrients have side effects when taken in excess quantity. This is what I'm trying to help some of you not mess yourself up from. Increased serum calcium, which supplements will do, will suppress parathyroid hormone and also increase levels of fibroblast growth factor 23, which is known to be associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular events. That's heart attacks, strokes, all that stuff, and all-cause mortality. That is the risk of death from all causes. So increasing your serum calcium, whether that's by taking calcium supplements, whether that's by taking vitamin D supplements, whether that's by vitamin A. Do you know that vitamin A toxicity, one of the things you'll see in the research, it causes hypercalcemia, too much calcium in the blood? And how does the rat poison D3 kill rats? Mainly through the effects of hypercalcemia. It just rips all that calcium out of the bones, it goes into the blood, and this is how people get sick. So you can either add too much calcium to the blood, or you can yank it out of the bones and raise calcium in the blood. But some people feel better on vitamin A at the start. Some people feel better on rat poison D3 at the start. Wow, what a weird pattern. But then it causes long-term problems. Increased serum calcium level induces hypercoagulable state. That's called clotting, excessive clotting in the blood, and can increase the risk of cardiovascular mortality. That's death from heart disease. Hence, to conclude, we should not be over-enthusiastic to prescribe calcium supplementation to all, but we should be cautious. It shouldn't be prescribed after due consideration and diligence to those whose dietary calcium intake is insufficient. This can be fixed and can be increased by dietary means due to food intolerance or avoided. I think they mean by those whose dietary calcium is insufficient and cannot be increased by dietary means due to food intolerance or avoidance. So these are Indian folks. They're not native English speakers. So this one has a lot in it. Current calcium fortification experiences. Maybe this isn't the one I'm thinking of. So they are, okay, I want you to remember, folks, if they are fortifying our food with it, do you trust that? Do you like fluoride fortified water? Do you like vitamin A and D fortified milk or nut milks? They were now fortifying. So on my recent flight, Alaska Airlines, they're fortifying apple juice with vitamin A and vitamin E. They're fortifying foods with calcium carbonate. We're going to go over that. So if they're fortifying foods, especially with calcium carbonate, you might want to reconsider. Do you think they're out for your best interest? Okay. Calcium is a nutrient of concern as the recommended nutrient requirements are difficult to meet in the absence of dairy products. Gosh, do you think that's by design? The provision of culturally acceptable calcium-fortified foods may improve calcium intake when it is a feasible and cost-effective strategy in a particular setting. So when it's easy enough for them and they don't spend too much money on poisoning us. This landscape review was conducted in 2019 and describes current calcium fortification efforts and lessons learned from these experiences. Worldwide, the United Kingdom is the only country where calcium fortification of wheat flour is mandatory. It is estimated that this fortified staple ingredient contributes to 13 to 14% of calcium intake of the British population. Other items voluntarily fortified with calcium, include maize flour, rice, and water. What don't they fortify rice with? They'll fortify it with vitamin A. They'll fortify it with calcium. They're going to fortify calcium water? Like they're going to put calcium into the water? Okay. So another sign here. Although low calcium intake has been identified in many countries for several years, it has not been prioritized by most countries. Why not? Is it kind of like vitamin A back in South America in like the 80s where they didn't see problems associated with it? People were saying, well, these are the symptoms of vitamin A deficiency and we don't see them in our people. So these are the symptoms of calcium deficiency, but we're not seeing in our people, and the RDA for our country is low and it seems to be doing fine. This is maybe because low calcium intake is not viewed as being a life-threatening condition in the overall population as compared with other key nutrients. All right. So I'm saying here, I'm not saying calcium's not critical to have enough of. We need to have enough. Too much of it can be a problem. Now, for anyone who has a real fit about me using a Wikipedia article, I need this to be summarized. You want to have a fit, have a fit. Okay? Let's see. Humans, in 2022, it was the 277th most commonly prescribed medication in the United States with more than 700,000 prescriptions. So I just want to make sure they're fortifying food with it and doctors are prescribing it. Do you trust those things? Doctors are literally prescribing calcium supplements. Might want to reconsider. Dietary recommendations. The Institute of Medicine established RDAs for calcium in 1997 and updated those values in 2011. See the table. The European Food Safety Authority uses the term population reference intakes instead of RDAs and sets slightly different numbers. Ages 4 to 10, 800 milligrams. Ages 11 to 17, 1150 milligrams. Ages 18 to 24, 1000 milligrams. And over 25 years old, 950 milligrams. Because of concerns of long-term adverse side effects, such as calcification of arteries and kidney stones, the IOM and EFSA both set tolerable upper intake levels for the combination of dietary and supplemental calcium. From the Institute of Medicine, people ages 9 to 18 years are not supposed to exceed 3,000 milligrams a day. For ages 19 to 50, not to exceed 2,500 milligrams a day. For ages 51 and older, not to exceed 2,000 milligrams a day. Why does it go down? Do we lose our ability to process it because our kidneys get junky generally as we get older? The EFSA set the upper limit at 2,500 milligrams a day for adults, but decided the information for children and adolescents was not sufficient to determine upper limits. I want you to pay attention here. There's a thing called a safety factor with anything you might take, okay? I have a whole video, Joe. I don't know if you'll be able to find it, but the safety margin, or if you search for safety or something like that, safe or safety in my YouTube videos, there's one where I talk about how the safety margin that's been established for vitamin A is a joke. And I think it's like the difference between the tolerable upper limit, where they expect you to get problems if you go above it, and the RDA. It should be well above 2 times. Any of you who are in like engineering, you know that a safety factor of 2 is a joke. You want a safety factor of like 10 minimum. So let's look at this. They say the upper limit, the highest is 3,000. And then it goes 2,500, and then it goes 2,000. The highest upper limit of 3,000, but wait, they're saying there's only a safety factor of 3. And that's both from food and supplements. A safety factor of 3 is not, it's a joke. So what they're saying is there is a narrow window that you want to be in for calcium. It's definitely not just, oh, your symptoms come back, take more. It's definitely not that. Just keep escalating. I'm sure everything will be fine. No, that's not it. Okay, so Sean Jock says, I was supplementing with calcium a few years ago, but stopped because of calcific tendonitis. The tendon was turning into bone. I couldn't lower my arm before below shoulder level. ARG. Yeah. That's a rough one. Oh, I did the mea culpa thing. So let's go to the next one. Calcium biology. Okay. Now, just so you guys know who's a fan of fortifying food with calcium, the Gates Foundation is a big fan of it. What does the Gates Foundation do? We work to broaden the use of proven interventions, proven like the pokey, ranging from breastfeeding to large-scale food fortification, and we support the development and testing of new solutions. Okay, so Bill Gates is a fan of food fortification. This next one, calcium-fortified foods in public health programs, because they love us so much. Considerations for implementation. One challenge is the low bioavailability of calcium salts. Calcium salts would be like calcium carbonate. Thus, large amounts need to be added to food to have a meaningful impact. Solubility is important when fortifying liquids and acidic foods because they crystallize and precipitate, which is what they do in your body, which is what we're going to go over. That's heart disease. That's kidney stones. That's gallstones. We're going to go over that. Safety is key to avoid exceeding the recommended intake. Wait, what did they just say there? Safety is key to avoid exceeding the recommended intake. So they're sitting there saying we want to put it in your food, but it's really important that we don't give you too much. So the amount of added calcium should be based on the target calcium intake and the gap between adequate and inadequate levels. Go to the next one. They're going to talk about their problems. One of the most challenging technical issues in calcium food fortification is the low bioavailability of calcium from different sources, including calcium salts. Bioavailability is the amount of calcium that the body absorbs. It doesn't mean it's doing work necessarily. It means it just got into your system. This depends on several factors. For example, bioavailability is lower if calcium is consumed with an empty stomach compared with a light meal. When a dose of 250 milligrams of elemental calcium is given with a meal, the absorption of calcium is 35% from malate citrate, 27%. Have you ever seen malate citrate in foods? I doubt it. 27% from calcium carbonate and 25% from tricalcium phosphate. When comparing 11 different calcium salt combinations, single compound or combinations of salt, the bioavailability was 20 to 40%. Which is within 10% of the bioavailability of calcium from milk, which is about 30%. I want you guys to understand, if you have a calcium deficiency, I want you to understand why one of these approaches makes sense and one of these approaches doesn't. If you are really calcium deficient, your hormone system and your gut receptors and everything that functions on calcium, if your body is saying we are deficient, it will upregulate your ability to absorb calcium. So you will absorb more calcium than if somebody was okay on calcium versus, let's say, you're low in calcium, you guys both take in a certain amount of calcium. The person who is lower in calcium will absorb more of that calcium than the person who is sufficient in calcium. Your body will upregulate your absorption. So a person should be able to fill up their calcium deficiency, their deficit, over time from a smaller amount of calcium. It doesn't mean like a small, but enough calcium. They should be able to refill their calcium stuff over time. As you get more and more calcium, your body decreases your absorption. This is known. This is science. This is nutrition. If you're getting too much calcium, your body will downregulate your absorption. So if, let's say, people were taking these mega doses of calcium as a suppressive mechanism, and they have to force it into their system by taking more and more because their body is absorbing less and less, and their body's saying, please stop. Stop shoving this in here. I don't want to absorb it anymore. But they shove it in enough that osmotically they can push through and they get the effect that they like. They get this honeymoon phase. And then later on, it can't work. And like Mikey said, he couldn't just stop the calcium. He had to wean off of it. This is what we've seen from RBTI and stuff like that, okay? Right, John Dickinson said, not being 100% correct all the time is verboten. Right, yes, I must be perfect, or else everything I've said is garbage. I feel bad for the people who think that. Okay. Oh, wait. Is there a worldwide zinc deficiency going on, folks? Have I not been over this before? Do I not connect zinc? Did I not connect zinc to all 10 of the main causes of death in the US? What does calcium supplementation do to zinc? Calcium supplementation may also decrease zinc absorption and balance in healthy women and premature infants. The long-term effect of these interactions should be studied further to confirm if they pose a detriment. I'm going to guess that zinc deficiency is a problem. As you'll see later, I have a study that shows that enough zinc in the system actually decreases calcification. Wow, what a weird coincidence. I love zinc. So now let's keep going. Or wait, did we finish this one? I think that was it. Nope. A potential risk of the addition of calcium to a fortification program. Why are they talking about risks with calcium? I thought it was only good. Oh, if it is combined with other nutritional programs in an uncoordinated way or purposely coordinated. For example, in some countries, there is fortification, mandatory or voluntary, of staple foods, the stuff everybody eats, with one or more micronutrient supplementation programs with some vitamins and minerals, vitamin A, vitamin D, and the use of fortified blended foods or micronutrient powders for vulnerable groups. Additionally, the food industry is also voluntarily fortifying a few processed foods, and in some countries of Latin America, Africa, and Asia, biofortification of staple crops. This could be GMO, but it's also just hybridizing, crossbreeding, is also in place. More details about this have been published elsewhere. Therefore, there is a concern that in some countries, particularly in high-income countries, is the U.S. considered a high-income country? Yes. All of these events are occurring simultaneously without proper monitoring. Is that on purpose? Which could lead to excessive calcium intake. This has been evident in recent reviews. They already know the problem exists. Are they fixing it? Nah. Let's go look, keep going. And they mention here, in the case of calcium, the upper limit, highest level likely to pose no risk of adverse health effects is 2,500 to 3,000 milligrams per day. We're going to go over how that's not always true at all. Oh, this is a fun one. So a lot of you guys are not big fans of social justice, right? You kind of don't like the woke speak and that kind of stuff. Let's hit on this. Food fortification with calcium is subject to ethical challenges. As with any other food fortification program, the addition of calcium to foods must be informed by the right to health. This is true. Based on scientific evidence, well, we know with vitamin A, they kind of screwed with all the scientific evidence. So we can't just go by like taking the majority of the evidence. Taking into account human rights instruments for the intervention and implementation. Do you see where this is going? It should benefit populations, avoid unintended harm, and promote the principles of equity and social justice. Yay, social justice. And who sponsored this review? The people who love us so much. This review was funded by the UNDP, UNFPA, UNICEF, World Health Organization, World Bank Special Program of Research. I believe I should be bugging out right now. Development and Research Training in Human Reproduction, Department of Sexual and Reproductive Health and Research, World Health Organization, Geneva, Switzerland. And then they try to say, oh, the authors didn't do it just for the WHO. The authors alone are responsible for the views expressed in this article, even though it was funded by the World Health Organization. They do not necessarily represent the views, decisions, or policies of the institutions with which they are affiliated, or the decisions, policies, or views of the World Health Organization. I'm sure they'd get to keep their jobs if their view on calcium fortification was different than the WHO, right? So this is who WHO and the World Bank wants you to fortify your food with calcium. Trustworthy, eh? Oh, calcium-fortified foods. Okay, so I just want to hit on this real quick. Joe, I'm going to have to do a different share. I got to go back here and then share my PDF. Close that, close that, close that. Okay, let me go. Let me move this over here. Sorry, I didn't prep this correctly. And then let's go screen. We'll go window, entire screen. Yes. Okay, Joe, can you see my yeah, you got it. Okay, great. Oh, not this one. We want this one. So let's just go over, like in the US, how many foods are fortified with calcium? Because they love us. Zoom in a bit. Oh, wait, that might be too much. Get rid of this. Okay. Sorry, let me, Joe, is that you sending me a message? Let me see. Hold on, I got to check because I don't have, oh, thanks for the Zoom. Okay, got it. Calcium-fortified foods. Calcium-fortified foods have exploded in the marketplace, appearing in perishable and non-perishable foods alike. These foods can contribute a significant amount of calcium to the diet, for better or worse. At the same time, high calcium intake should be avoided since patients with chronic kidney disease may encounter difficulties in buffering. Buffering, like you mean like acid-base balance? Increased calcium loads because calcium is very, very alkaline. It's like the most alkaline mineral that we would normally eat. And such difficulty may result in hypercalcemia and or soft tissue calcification. What do we fix? Oh, we're really good at fixing soft tissue calcification. So what should we watch out for not getting too much of? Calcium. The number of foods fortified with calcium is extensive. As such, this list, they limited it, is limited to beverages, breads and crackers, cereals, waffles, pancakes, muffins, margarine, and pasta. As a point of reference, a food can be labeled as a good source of calcium if it has at least 10% of the RDA, which is 1,000 milligrams. If a food is labeled an excellent source of calcium, it will have at least 20% of the RDA. Oh, they're saying the RDA is 1,000. See, again, they said 1,000. Table 1, calcium content in calcium-fortified foods. You guys can go and look at the PDF if you want. Here we go. Look at all these foods. And we see classic small town, brands. Ocean Spray, Aquafina, which is that Coke or Pepsi? Tropicana, Minute Maid, Sunny Delight, General Mills. These are all our favorite food manufacturers, right? They really love us. Nabisco, Quaker. Old-fashioned oats from Quaker are not organic, so I wouldn't eat them, but the regular oats are not fortified with calcium. Oh, wait, a whole nother chart. Let's go into the whole nother chart. More General Mills, Kellogg's, Entenmann's, Luna bars for you energy bar, protein bar thing. Keebler. I can't believe it's not butter. Pillsbury. Aunt Jemima. Chef Boyardee. These are all companies that are known for caring about our health, right? So they are either, well, I believe this is voluntary. They're voluntarily fortifying their foods with calcium because I don't think it's required in the US. They love you. They want you to get enough calcium. Now, here's what I want to tell you. Okay, so supplemental calcium may be more of a problem if you are vitamin A toxic, or you're taking vitamin D supplements, or copper toxic, or all three of them, or two of the three. Throwing calcium onto vitamin A toxicity and vitamin D supplements and copper toxicity is throwing gasoline on the fire. So people may be able to take a lot more, as Mikey said, people may be able to take more calcium with less negative side effects, or it may take longer for it to show up if with my help, they've already depleted their vitamin A and they've stopped taking their vitamin D supplements and they've been working on their copper toxicity. The toll will be likely paid at some point for those who are taking mega doses of calcium. So there was that. Now let's get into, wait, we did this one. Let me find it, Joe. Is that the right one? No, this one. Okay, so we're back here. Okay, current calcium fortification experiences, a review. Wait, is this? Oh, no, this is the one I just went over. This is the one I went over. Okay. And I just wanted to go over these real quick. So as I've gone over before in my live streams, there are certain words that are used in the research when they don't want to talk about toxicity or problems from something. There are magical words. They use words like calcium signaling. So they use words like homeostasis, calcium homeostasis. And they use words like dysregulation, which I use too, because dysregulation means you've got too much calcium where you're not supposed to have it, and you don't have enough where you are supposed to have it. This is why osteoporosis and heart disease can both happen at the same time, because there's too much calcium in the heart and the arteries, and there's not enough calcium in the bones. This is dysregulation. Is that a problem? Yes, but are they not? I mean, what would be a great way to cause calcium dysregulation to get worse? Take way too much calcium. The body is already not put. Okay. Osteoporosis is not a problem of a lack of calcium per se. It's a problem of the body not holding the calcium in the bones for whatever reason. Well, did you know that more than 3,000 units of vitamin A a day has been shown to cause osteoporosis? So if you've got vitamin A toxicity going on and it's yanking calcium out of your bones, you putting more calcium, and then it's also that calcium is being put in your soft tissues and your brain and your heart, your joints. Well, throwing more calcium in the system doesn't fix the bones, because the bones are already not holding on to calcium. So you lose the calcium from the bones. You continue losing calcium from the bones, and you've just added gasoline to the fire of calcifying your soft tissues. You have not solved anything. And then what soft tissues can calcify that could kill you? Oh, I don't know, like your heart and your blood vessels. Why do they call it a coronary artery calcium score and not a coronary artery cholesterol score? Because they measure it by the amount of calcium that's there. Let's keep going. Like I said, we got a lot today, folks. Like I said. Now we're going to go into bile, because a lot of people try to sell calcium as magically helping the bile. It can bind to bile salts. Yes, it can bind to bile. Calcium can bind to bile. Okay. When calcium binds to bile and the other things in bile in the gallbladder, right? Bile goes into the gallbladder. It tends to form gallstones. So yes, it can bind to bile, for better or worse. Now I want you to wrap your brain around this one. Bile salts and calcium absorption. Bile salts and calcium absorption. Bile and bile salts cause an increase in calcium absorption from sparingly soluble calcium hydrogen phosphate when compared with the suspension of calcium hydrogen phosphate in saline. Bile increases calcium absorption. Okay. If the bile ducts of normal rats are tied, as in they gave them cholestasis, the absorption of calcium from calcium hydrogen phosphate decreases, but can be restored by giving bile salts with the calcium salt. Okay, another showing bile increases calcium absorption. Bile salts increase solubility in water of the sparingly soluble calcium salts, phytate and phosphate, at pH values between 6 and 8.5. The body's pHs are going to be well between these numbers. Bile salts increase the solubility in lipid fatty solvents of calcium in approximately the same proportion as they increase the absorption of calcium from the gut. So basically, the gist of this one, bile increases calcium absorption. Bile is almost not totally necessary for calcium absorption, but bile is a very important part of calcium absorption. So let's just say that the body can regulate its bile production, which it can. So if the body was getting too much calcium in the blood and in the tissues, what does it make sense that the body's feedback loop would reduce bile production? Does that make sense? Wouldn't we hope that's what happens? If you need bile to absorb calcium and you were getting too much in your system, wouldn't you want to reduce the amount of bile produced so that you don't kill yourself, literally kill yourself with excess calcium coming in? Doesn't that make sense? Okay. Here's another paper, pre-micellar taurocolate. This is bile, enhances calcium uptake from all regions of the rat's small intestine. Do we need to go into detail on this one? Bile increases calcium absorption, which would be recirculation, recycling. We have previously shown that calcium is bound with high affinity by pre-micellar taurocolate. Current studies examine the effects of taurocolate on intestinal calcium transport, whether you absorb it or don't. Pre-micellar taurocolate produced an approximately 1.7 to 2 times increase in calcium uptake in all regions, with lesser contributions from micellar taurocolate. These effects resulted in a net increase in calcium absorption. Pre-micellar taurocolate also significantly increased calcium uptake across brush border vesicles. That's another part of your gut. Conclusions. Pre-micellar taurocolate significantly enhances calcium uptake into and absorption across enterocytes. So if certain bile acids increase your calcium absorption and your body wanted less calcium, does it make sense that your body would turn down bile production? If it can't, boy, we're screwed. Now, again, is calcium fixing bile or cholestasis leaking toxic bile into your bloodstream? Bile going places it's not supposed to go shuts down calcium signaling in cholangiocytes. Those are bile duct cells. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but shutting down calcium signaling does not mean there's a calcium deficiency. It means calcium signaling, the calcium moving back and forth, is not happening like it should. But notice they're not saying calcium causes cholestasis. They're saying cholestasis, which is what we fix, shuts down calcium signaling. So if we fix this, we should improve calcium signaling in the bile duct cells. Does that make sense? I'm going to skip the rest of this one. You guys can look at it. Oh, we'll just hit this last one. This is, let me see. Let me just go over this one. The inositol 145 triphosphate receptor. This receptor mediated calcium signaling in bile duct epithelia, the lining of the bile ducts, appears to be important for normal bile secretion in the liver. And loss of these, which happens with cholestasis, may be a common final pathway for cholestasis. What do you think might cause these receptors to go away? Do you think toxic bile might just burn them out? Or maybe the body is purposely pulling them back. Why? I don't know. Now, GLASP is not working here. My highlights are not working, so we're going to do our best here. Oh, there, now it's working again. Does it make a difference how and when you take your calcium? The acute effects of calcium on calcium and bone metabolism. Jump to it, please. Well, at least the highlights are showing up, I think. Even small calcium doses decrease serum PTH. Your body is saying, we got enough calcium. Even small calcium doses turn down your parathyroid hormone. And it increased serum ionized calcium concentrations rapidly. This is whenever you see free calcium in the rest of this presentation, or you see calcium Ca++ or calcium 2+. When they say ionized calcium, they mean free calcium. The effect was similar whether the calcium was taken in the morning or the evening. So your body's saying, I don't want as much calcium in my blood. And we're shoving it in there. And it's increasing free calcium. Waiting to see what free calcium does to gallstones. Okay, and it's not jumping to my thing. This page has been weird the whole time. Let me see if I can find it quick enough. Or maybe I'll just skip this one. Show me the highlight. I don't think it's going to show up. I don't know why this one. So if, Joe, can you see my, the side part here, the glass part? Okay, yes. So I'm just going to read these. These are quotes that were highlighted. The GLASP is just not working on this. So serum ionized calcium concentrations increased in response to the calcium load. Free calcium increased. There was a significant dose-dependent effect of the 250 and 1,000 milligram calcium loads on serum ionized calcium. So the bigger the dose of calcium they gave them, the more the blood calcium increased, especially free calcium. Urinary calcium excretion, like, why would your body get rid of all this calcium if it loves it so much? Increased significantly. And that means it also had to go through your kidneys. What happens when your kidneys calcify? What do they call that? Kidney stones. Urinary calcium excretion increased significantly after both calcium loads relative to values on the control day. Post-calcium load, urinary calcium excretion was 1.47 on the control day and 1.79 and 2.39 millimoles after the 250 milligram and 1,000 milligram loads, respectively. So, if you see this and you jump to this, the body is not getting rid of 4 times as much calcium. More is gonna stay. Serum ionized calcium increased significantly compared with the control session after 4 repetitive doses of 200 milligrams calcium. The post-load urinary excretion of calcium was higher than that during the control session from the 200 milligram doses. Serum PTH, which controls calcium, decreased significantly compared with the control session beginning after the first of the 4 doses and remains significantly different after the subsequent 3 doses. Your body is trying to adjust to you loading it with too much calcium. It is well known that an oral calcium load of greater than or equal to 1 gram decreases serum PTH concentrations and increases serum ionized calcium concentrations and urinary calcium excretion. Your body tries to let less mess up your system, and it tries to pee out more. But it still gets more calcium into the blood. Let me see. Oh, McCain et al. Showed that the secretory capacity of the parathyroid gland decreases with long-term high calcium intakes of 2.4 grams a day or more. Do you understand the body? They already said that the body will increase parathyroid hormone when people take calcium supplements. But they're saying if they take long-term high doses of calcium, the parathyroid gland starts not working as well and it can't make as much PTH. That's bad. That means the body is not compensating. Things are failing. In addition, we showed that serum PTH concentrations in the morning are lower with habitually high calcium intakes than with low intakes, even within a normal calcium intake range. So PTH, they're taking within a normal dose of calcium. Over time, long term, the serum PTH concentrations in the morning are lower, 1.3 grams a day, that's the RDA, than with low intake. So the body is still losing its ability to compensate with high dose calcium over time. You want the body to be able to compensate. You don't want it to lose the ability to compensate. This is why I'm warning you guys who are out there taking tons of calcium supplements. We got Mikey warning you. We got me warning you. This is not going to end well. And I'm doing this because I actually do care about people, regardless of what some people have said. And I'm trying to help you to not mess yourself up. Calcium-alkali syndrome in the modern era. Calcium-alkali syndrome. Let's go find this. One of the things I'm showing you here is that calcium supplementation especially raises free calcium or ionized calcium. 1 gram of calcium as either citrate or as lactate gluconate raised the mean ionized calcium level from 1.22 to 1.3. The less absorbable calcium carbonate increased ionized calcium by approximately 0.05 millimoles. This is 0.08, right? 0.05, and the same calcium load as bone meal only raised it by 0.03 millimoles. I wouldn't go out and take a bunch of bone meal because you may be taking cadmium and lead at the same time. Your collagen and your gelatin probably came from bones, and they may have plenty of copper and lead and cadmium in it too. Kelsey and I are going to do some testing of collagens and gelatins to show what may not be showing up on the nutrient stuff on the internet. Okay. So now, we already saw that bile increases calcium absorption. Okay. What about, so we talk about bile, the toxic bile paradigm. What is calcium? A calcium ion would be free calcium. Differential effects of calcium ions and calcium phosphate on the cytotoxicity, the toxicity to the cells of bile acids. So they start out here. Remember, whenever they're gonna say something bad happens that they didn't expect, they always start out with the gaslighting. Unconjugated secondary bile acids can promote colon cancer by damaging colonic mucosa and consequently increasing epithelial proliferation. So that's true. Then you get into that it has been proposed that dietary calcium inactivates intestinal bile acids either by a calcium-dependent precipitation by binding to it or by binding to insoluble calcium phosphate. So they say this could be a problem, but the proposal is that calcium will fix this. What do they find? So remember, they just said our proposal is that it's good. Calcium concentrations up to 15 micromoles did not precipitate bile acids, but that's what they told us. But it stimulated cytotoxicity. It increased the toxicity of both deoxycholate and its glycine conjugate, glycodeoxycholate. Cytotoxicity of the taurine conjugate, as in taurodeoxycholate, was stimulated to a much lesser extent. Calcium stimulated the toxicity. It increased the toxicity of all three of these. The taurine one was just less. Cytotoxicity of bile acids is stimulated by free calcium and inhibited by calcium phosphate. This inhibition is due to binding of carboxylic, including secondary bile acids, to calcium phosphate. Okay. Free calcium stimulated bile toxicity. Whoops. Supplements increase free calcium very quickly. We just went over that. Oh, let's see if we can get GLASP to work on this one. There we go. The effect of calcium and vitamin A in patients with metabolic associated fatty liver diseases. The study found that the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease group had lower levels of vitamin A than the control group, but higher calcium levels. We've talked about this before, how when people, let's say they're deficient in zinc, they're deficient in protein, they're deficient in, what's the other one? It's not coming to mind right now. But just zinc or protein, if you're deficient in zinc or protein, vitamin A gets stuck in your liver and it doesn't come out as much. And so you give these people more protein and more zinc, and all of a sudden their vitamin A levels go up, even though they didn't take vitamin A, because it's coming out of their liver finally. It was stuck there. So I don't worry about lower levels of vitamin A because they're all in the normal range. No one's deficient. But the fatty liver people had higher calcium levels. Isn't that interesting? I'm telling you, you don't want to play with fire like this. Association of serum calcium levels with diabetic kidney disease in normal calcium type 2 diabetes patients, a cross-sectional study. What do you think we're going to find with their calcium levels? A 0.1 millimole per liter increase in corrected serum calcium was associated with a 44% increased risk of, I think there's, what are they saying DKD is? Oh, diabetic kidney disease in type 2 diabetes people. A 44% increased risk of diabetic kidney disease. The GAM, what's GAM? Oh, the generalized additive model, where they're putting things together. The generalized additive model indicated a linear relationship between corrected serum calcium and diabetic kidney disease. So they go up together. Consistent across subgroups. So they broke the groups down into smaller groups, and they still saw serum calcium and kidney disease go up. Corrected serum calcium levels were linearly associated with diabetic kidney disease risk in type 2 diabetes patients, underlining its potential role in risk assessment. Now, we talk a lot about magnesium, right? Okay, Mikey was saying, what I can't get my head around calcium is how freaking hard it is to avoid. Are you doing a 100% prison diet like Grant, never treating yourself, having a low calcium water every time, even cooking? I do reverse osmosis. I don't do a prison diet like Grant, which may be, I cheat a bit, but I'm not doing a lot of dairy. I've run into actually Thor Torrens, who's out there promoting low vitamin A. He started realizing that he tried a little bit of extra calcium for like a couple days, and issues that may have been related to low calcium for him got fixed. Now, he also lives in Florida, and he's exercising a ton in the Florida humidity and heat, so he may be sweating out too much. But like him and I are not really showing a lot of this calcium deficiency stuff. I've been recently increasing my calcium intake from foods, from like Love Your Liver type foods, and Thor did his little thing, and I'm not feeling much of anything. So do I think that everybody has a calcium deficiency on this program? No. Some people might. Different things affect different people differently. Anything can cause anything can cause anything in anybody, potentially. So, can we make sure that we get, let's say, a minimal amount of calcium, a minimal effective amount of calcium based on the research that we go over, and still stay low vitamin A? Yeah. Like we don't try. Well, that's something, Mikey. We don't try to avoid it per se. Our choices of foods may have indirectly led us to avoid it. It's like vitamin E. When I talk about vitamin E and people say, well, I'm trying to avoid vitamin E in foods, but it's really hard. And I'm like, I never said to do that. I never said to avoid calcium in foods. I said to prioritize, we're trying to do low vitamin A foods. Did that indirectly cause the calcium intake to be low? Yes, it did. And we're fixing that now. Now, that's just the way it is. So, if people have been, let's say, cheating on the program more with, let's say, dairy, and they're going, well, I cheat, but I don't have any problems with low calcium, they may have addressed that enough, because and No. Matthew, good texture on Twitter, was saying a lot of people are probably justifying, they just want to go back to eating dairy, and so they're justifying this whole calcium thing as, well, obviously we need dairy. People will do anything to get their favorite foods. This is known. Hold on, Joe's telling me something on Telegram. Something's interfering with the video. My computer might be running a little slow, Joe. Let me make sure everything I can turn off is off. Here, let me put this. Well, we're back. Okay, Joe says we're back. So we got calcium to magnesium intake ratio and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease development, a case control study. Participants in the third and fourth quartile of calcium to magnesium ratio intake. So they have the highest ratio of calcium to magnesium. So the most calcium to a lower amount of magnesium. The very highest, which would be the fourth quartile, has the highest cal-mag ratio. The third has the next highest. Had a greater development of incidental non-alcoholic fatty liver compared to the lowest quartile. So, folks, the poison always wins. If you're taking a crap ton of calcium supplements and you think you're going to undo it all or prevent all the problems by taking enough magnesium, whatever that is. Well, so the magnesium is not going to undo that. There's two problems with taking mega doses of calcium carbonate. One is the excess calcium, which is alkaline. The other one is the alkaline group on it called carbonate. Calcium's alkaline, carbonate's alkaline. So you have the excess amount of calcium over time, but even if you took enough magnesium to counteract that, the alkalosis will get you. And magnesium is alkaline by itself too. So do you see how this is all leading into like alkaline on top of alkaline on top of alkaline? And then people are mega dosing. I'm not saying alkaline is bad. I'm saying if anything can be bad if you overdo it. How could you overdo alkalinity? I don't know. Take antacid pills called calcium carbonate, Tums, basically every day in mega doses. That would be one way to do it. Moreover, energy-adjusted calcium to magnesium intake ratio was positively correlated with plasma level of ALT, one of the liver enzymes. So the higher the calcium to magnesium ratio, the higher the liver enzymes. That's not good. The current study revealed that a higher dietary calcium to magnesium intake ratio is associated with a greater development of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Keep going. So I'm not going to spend much time on this one. It's just the same thing. Decreased magnesium status may mediate the increased cardiovascular risk associated with calcium supplementation. Does that make sense? If heart disease is caused by an excess of calcium that's not getting dissolved, that's precipitating, if you don't have enough magnesium, which can help dissolve those things, then the calcium crystallizes and precipitates and causes bigger problems. So that's all I'm going to do on that one. Okay, I am going to try to run through these quickly. We're going to go into the risks of calcium supplementation because they are well known. There are people out there who are taking mega doses of calcium and they're not monitoring their blood calcium and they're not monitoring their pHs and they're not monitoring anything related to the dangers of this. Okay. I mean, I believe that would be called FAFO, especially after I show people all this research. So again, calcium is an important integrative component of the human body and critical for human health. We are not denying that at all. However, community-dwelling adults with and without osteoporosis are rarely concerned or even not aware of the potential side effects of high or inappropriate doses of calcium intake. Sound familiar? Some recent studies have revealed that excessive calcium intake might increase the risks of cardiovascular diseases. Oh yeah, I'm going to show you all that. In the end, we suggest that calcium supplementation should be prescribed and taken cautiously, accounting for individual patients' risks and benefits. Calcium supplementation is a widespread practice in different age groups and has been promoted widely to improve bone density. The public generally believes that calcium is always good for health. Whoops. Owing largely to successful marketing and various clinical practice guidelines. Beth Martins was telling me about back in the day, she got suspicious of calcium supplements because they were pushing it everywhere for women, like the vitamin D and calcium. Do you know that one of the biggest like hush mistakes modern medicine ever did was they started recommending calcium and vitamin D to all the women. And then finally they stopped doing it when they realized the research came out. Like Nathan, my facilitator, told me this. He's like, oh yeah, I remember back in the day when everybody was pushing calcium and vitamin D, and then the research came out and they were kind of like, whoops, we're killing women with heart attacks. Oops. That was like the last time, but now they just do vitamin D. So they took out the calcium and now they just give vitamin D because calcium plus vitamin D kills people too fast. They can't do that. They get caught. So they just do vitamin D now, but then they still kind of promote calcium on the side. Successful marketing, that's what that is. Or propaganda, whatever you want to call it. Based on the published data, 61% of women aged over 60 years received calcium supplements in 2003 to 2006 in the United States. As a result, calcium supplementation has become a billion dollar market in recent years and has been taken by millions of both men and women, children, adults, and the elderly wishing to improve their skeletal health. So if this was $1 billion, I don't know when this paper was, I'm not going to go look at it, but that was probably 2007, 2008, maybe 2010. You think it's a bit more than that now? Recently, increasing concerns have been raised regarding whether indiscriminate calcium supplementation is safe. A meta-analysis by Bischoff-Ferrari et al. Demonstrated an increased hip fracture risk with calcium supplementation. An increased hip fracture risk with calcium supplementation. How does that work? A recent meta-analysis of randomized clinical trials showed that calcium supplementation was not associated with a low risk of fractures among community-dwelling older adults. There has been a concern for a significant increase in the risk of cardiovascular diseases with high supplemental calcium intake in men. Indiscriminate. Dosing based on symptoms, maybe. It is well established that calcium is an extremely important and integrative component of the human body, with 99% of the body's calcium being contained within the skeleton. So it's kind of controlled, right? Plasma calcium homeostasis plays a vital role in maintaining human life activities such as maintenance of the skeleton, regulation of hormonal secretion like PTH, transmission of nerve impulses, and vascular activities. That's blood vessels. As shown in figure 1, dietary calcium is absorbed mainly in the small intestine, which is where the bile goes, coincidentally. Okay, let's go to the next one. The current evidence is not sufficient to recommend calcium supplementation for the primary prevention of fractures in community-dwelling asymptomatic premenopausal women. So they just said that there's not enough evidence to prescribe calcium to prevent osteoporosis in women. Shouldn't that be an easy thing to find? Wouldn't you think that would be easy? There is still a lack of clinical data to recommend calcium supplementation in pregnant or lactating women for the skeletal health of fetus and mother. A Cochrane database systemic review found that calcium supplementation during pregnancy did not have any clear additional benefits in the prevention of preterm birth or low infant birth weight. Notice they said supplementation. They didn't say diet. They said supplementation. You must distinguish between the two. We're going to do that with more research, as we do. Interestingly, in a study in pregnant women in Gambia, West Africa, with low calcium intakes, so they had low calcium intakes, calcium supplement resulted in significantly lower bone mineral content, bone area, and bone mineral density at the hip throughout 12 months of lactation. The women also had greater decreases in bone mineral during lactation at the lumbar spine and distal radius and had biochemical changes consistent with greater bone mineral mobilization, or you could say bone degeneration. But they gave them calcium supplements. What is going on? Maybe there's a problem with calcium supplements, people. Men, we don't want to leave you out. The double-blind randomized controlled trial performed on 323 healthy men aged over 40 years for a 2-year period revealed that the 1,200 milligrams a day group showed increased bone mineral density. However, it needs to be noted that urine calcium tended to increase by 57% correspondingly. So yes, these guys had more bone mineral density, yes. They're also pushing out a ton of calcium through their kidneys, which is how you get kidney stones. A prospective cohort study conducted among an elderly Chinese population indicated that dietary calcium intake, on average 600 milligrams a day, could reduce the risk of death from all causes and cardiovascular diseases. What are we seeing here? 400, 500, 600 from diet? Not causing deficiency problems? It reduced the risk of death from all causes and cardiovascular diseases. So remember this one. Elderly Chinese eating 600 milligrams a day died less. We should pay attention to this. Interestingly, a 12-year. So I care the most about long-term studies. I don't care about people talking about petri dishes and calcium signaling. That just Zoom, Joe. I saw my thing flash. No, we're good. Okay. Gosh, this is freaking me out. I got to turn that thing off. Okay, here we are again. Interestingly, a 12-year prospective study of 91,000 women without a history of kidney stones with 12-year follow-up suggested that a high dietary calcium could reduce the risk of kidney stones, whereas the risk would be increased in women with high supplemental calcium. Do we find a theme here? Are we finding a theme here, folks? You know, there seems to be a theme. Calcium in your diet, not a huge problem. Calcium from supplements, problem. Despite the above-mentioned studies providing powerful evidence for beneficial health-related effects of taking calcium, interesting, some recent evidence has implied that calcium supplementation might increase the risk for cardiovascular diseases and malignancy. Cancer. What is more notable about these adverse effects is that under the recommended dosage, calcium would produce some unwelcome reactions. Maybe that's that safety margin thing. Therefore, a more detailed consideration of the safety and health benefits of calcium supplementation would be warranted. A number of adverse events are possibly influenced by calcium supplementation. These include myocardial infarction, heart attack, constipation, colorectal neoplasms, as in colon cancer, and kidney stones. For example, we'll go over this paper, but the Kuopio osteoporosis study where 10,000 women were followed for 7 years. The HR for coronary heart disease in those who were taking calcium supplements was 1.24. The risk was 1.24 times higher compared with non-users of supplements. Thus, a doubt was for the first time raised in the beneficial effects of calcium supplementation on bone due to its adverse cardiovascular effects by this randomized control study. Moreover, a total of 1,400 postmenopausal women were randomized to taking calcium or a placebo and followed over 5 years. And the risk was found to be 1.12 times higher for incident ischemic heart disease. More heart disease in the supplemental group. These surprising findings from the large related studies provide a stimulus for evaluating the effects of calcium on some disease events in other trials, which we describe below. Although most studies indicate that calcium supplementation has a beneficial effect on osteoporosis and fractures, this statement is not confirmed by some other researchers. Warenjo et al. Found that dietary calcium intake less than 751 milligrams per day raised the risk of osteoporosis-related fractures and osteoporosis. So they got too little calcium. Okay. Meanwhile, intake greater than 1,137 milligrams per day would increase the risk of hip fractures in women. Do you see how this safety margin is a joke? Dietary calcium intake of less than 750. I don't know if they mean total intake, because this might include supplements. Intake of over 1,100 milligrams a day would increase the risk of hip fractures. You're playing with fire here, folks, if you're taking supplements. You're absolutely playing with fire. A meta-analysis with 7 cohorts totaling 171,000 women reported that calcium supplementation does not reduce the risk of hip fractures. And on the contrary, an increase in risk is possible. Calcium supplementation not helping, causing problems. From these studies, the benefits of calcium supplementation become unclear, and there may be a therapeutic window where the greatest benefits on skeletal health are gained. Somewhere between 700 and 1,100. Hopefully you hit that. Further research is needed to clarify this with respect to dietary intake, ethnicity, race, age, and gender. The side effects of calcium have long been focused on cardiovascular diseases as the principal concern, and you will see that. Cardiovascular diseases, especially myocardial infarction, heart attack, and myocardial ischemia, that's the heart not getting enough blood and therefore oxygen, are among the leading causes of death in the world. It is estimated by a meta-analysis, including 11 randomized controlled trials, that calcium supplements have up to a 30% increased risk for myocardial infarction, heart attack. It was noteworthy that men or women aged greater than 50 years were recommended to take greater than 1,000 milligrams a day of calcium, according to the guidelines. However, the risk of cardiovascular diseases appears to be particularly increased when those doses are actually used. Are they trying to kill people? Are they literally trying to kill people? I want you to understand this. Calcium is one supplement that can put you in the ground. Like literally put you in the ground. You want to mess around with it? You got a new shiny object syndrome? Got a honeymoon phase? I'm trying to help you folks. A prospective study found that supplemental calcium intake of greater than 1,000 milligrams a day may raise the risk of death from cardiovascular diseases among men, but not among women. Women can seem to handle more calcium than men, but it's not by much. We're talking like, they talk about 1,000, 1,200, 1,500. That's not a lot. A randomized, placebo-controlled trial performed on a population of 1,500 postmenopausal healthy women with a follow-up lasting 5 years revealed that 1,000 milligrams a day of elemental calcium supplements increased the incidence of cardiovascular events. In addition, a prospective observational study suggested that the use of calcium supplements in a long term would raise the risk of hospitalization in patients with chronic heart failure. For patients with diabetes, that risk was doubled. Diabetes is already high calcium problems and not enough magnesium. So it's going to make sense. It is a remarkable fact that the effects of cardiovascular diseases between dietary and supplements of calcium lead to disparate results. What they mean is opposite results. A study indicated that the risk of myocardial infarction remarkably increased by taking calcium supplements compared with non-users of any supplements. The finding of an adverse trend in cardiovascular diseases with calcium supplementation is not necessarily surprising, as calcium supplements potentially contribute to elevated serum calcium levels and possibly accelerated cardiovascular calcification in the long run, which is predictive of cardiovascular event rates. They know what causes cardiovascular events in the long run. Increasing serum calcium levels, which supplements do, and calcifying of the soft tissues. Because of the high incidence of cardiovascular... Oh, wait. I need to move this. Hold on. There we go. Because of the high incidence of cardiovascular disease, any effects of calcium supplements on vascular health could be as important in terms of their effects on morbidity and mortality as their effects on osteoporosis or bone health. I want you to understand what they just said there. They say this multiple other times. They're like, well, we need to help decide for you whether you literally dying or having stronger bones is more important. That's really what they're saying here. They're saying like you dying might be as important as your bone density. Might be. We got to decide for you because you're too dumb to decide for yourself. Do you understand what they just said? As these adverse effects are confirmed, a comprehensive, so they got to wait. You got to wait longer. A comprehensive reappraisal of taking calcium supplements may be required. Maybe. We're still going to put in your foods. The second major safety concern with respect to calcium has been gastrointestinal diseases. The conclusion regarding the effects of calcium supplements on the gastrointestinal diseases is not totally consistent. Calcium supplements, we've already seen some of this happening. Calcium supplements may increase the incidence of constipation, severe diarrhea, and abdominal pain. It highlights that calcium carbonate is more often associated with gastrointestinal side effects, including constipation, flatulence, and bloating. It's freaking Tums. It's limestone. It's Tums. Of the 92,000 adverse events recorded, the occurrence of constipation was increased with calcium carbonate treatment, 1,200 milligrams a day, in a 5-year, double-blind, placebo-controlled study. They got all the magic words right there. Moreover, some studies demonstrated a negative correlation between the intake of calcium and colorectal adenoma. Negative correlation. So there are people out there trying to say that the calcium's absorbing all the bile and that therefore it's going to help you not get colon cancer. That's what some people are saying. But they made sure to include here a negative correlation would be higher intake of calcium and so I'm sorry. That's what they're saying here. They're saying some studies demonstrated a negative correlation, so higher intake of calcium and lower risk of colon cancer. But there's other studies that show different. A meta-analysis of 24 studies exploring the relationship between calcium supplementation and colon cancer, colorectal adenoma, implied that the pooled risk was 1.13 for the occurrence of colorectal adenoma. So risk was higher. As stated previously, these findings are inconsistent as other research has shown reduction in the risk of colorectal cancer with calcium supplements. So they're saying, well, we see both. We see increase in risk and decrease in risk. You want to take that bet? Wait until you see the long-term study on calcium supplements and precancerous lesions in the gut. Just wait till you see the long-term research. While studies indicate the potential beneficial effects of dietary calcium intake on the reduction of the risk of kidney stones. Dietary. Let's say that again. Dietary. Individuals who consumed any amount of supplemental calcium had an increased risk for kidney stones compared with individuals who did not consume supplemental calcium. Why? The hits, they just keep coming. Which disease do you not want to have? Don't take calcium. Nonetheless, a study conducted in 2006, including 36,000 postmenopausal women aged 50 to 70 years, followed up for an average of 7 years, receiving either 1,000 milligrams a day of elemental calcium or placebo, found a 17% increased risk of developing kidney stones, with 449 women reporting kidney stones in the calcium with vitamin D group versus 381 women in the placebo group. So yeah, they had vitamin D. Normally, stone formation in a normal kidney is relatively rare and is probably due to a combination of factors, like taking calcium supplements, such as health condition, urinary acidity, dietary habit, and variation in intake of calcium supplements. Calcium oxalate, calcium citrate, and calcium carbonates. Are people actually taking calcium oxalate supplements? Is that actually a thing? I've never even heard of that. Dietary calcium is more beneficial for health in the aspect of kidney stone development. Where are we not finding that dietary calcium is okay and supplemental calcium is a problem? Where are we not finding that? In addition, adverse effects of calcium on other diseases such as age-related macular degeneration, AMD, and metabolic syndrome, that's pre-diabetes, were reported. A recent cross-sectional study found that more than 800 milligrams a day of calcium consumption in people aged 67 years or older may increase the risk of AMD, macular degeneration, compared with those who do not take calcium. A study in Korea found that men taking dietary calcium more than 1,200 milligrams a day had increased the prevalence of metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, compared with those taking less than 1,200 milligrams a day. But no similar correlation was found in women. Again, I said women can handle more calcium than men. That doesn't mean it's going to be good for you. So they have the potential beneficial effects of calcium supplementation, but then they also have the potential adverse effects of calcium supplementation. The list is basically the same. So calcium supplementation has been shown to cause worsen osteoporosis, worsen cardiovascular disease, worsen gastrointestinal diseases, worsen kidney stones. Do you remember how many times I said dietary intake was positive and supplemental was not? If you missed that, you should probably go back and watch this again. Many factors could account for the inconsistencies in earlier studies. First, different dosages of calcium may induce different results. Dose dependent. Second, dietary calcium may have beneficial effects than calcium supplements. Poor English. But yes, dietary calcium may have beneficial effects that calcium supplements do not. Third, different populations and sample sizes may affect the results of studies. So would vitamin A consumption. So would vitamin D supplementation. All this stuff would affect it. In the reported studies, sample sizes vary from several hundreds to several thousands. Last, there are still some unknown mechanisms affecting the results. Therefore, further experimental studies are necessary to decipher the mechanisms of calcium intake affecting those diseases. As for the types of calcium to consume, a thorough search of the literature on calcium studies suggested that dietary calcium is more beneficial for health than calcium supplements, and that it is also easier to absorb. However, there is no denying that the favorable role of calcium is evident in people of all ages, not only in the postmenopausal women and elderly population, but also in childhood and adolescence. Calcium's important. Don't screw it up. Right? Calcium's very important. And it could put you in the ground. Based on the above-mentioned literature, the proper dosages of calcium supplementation for people are actually not clear, especially when considering its adverse health effects. Is it suitable for some people with some diseases to take calcium, such as those at a high risk for heart failure, as cardiovascular diseases are one of the top 3 causes of mortality currently? Didn't they just say that taking heart failure calcium supplements was bad? I remember that. And if taking calcium is necessary for those people, what is the proper dosage? How do we not kill them early? There appears to be no clear answer to questions like these. Therefore, we recommend that calcium supplementation should be prescribed cautiously and take into account the health status of individuals. Of note, the patients with hypercalcemia should avoid taking calcium supplements. Well, duh. The 2 studies demonstrated that calcium could prevent osteoporosis and osteoporotic fracture or improve bone mineral density, but simultaneously at the same time also revealed the increase of the occurrence of cardiovascular diseases and increase in urine calcium level, and subsequently in the risk of urinary kidney stones, basically. Bladder stones, kidney stones. The results stimulated our attention to evaluate whether the beneficial role in bone is greater than its side effects, than putting you in the ground. Therefore, calcium is a double-edged sword, which may be both potentially crucial and perilous. Calcium from food, good, get enough. Calcium from supplements, bad, may kill you. When do you find out? I don't know. When did Challen find out? At age 70. He was in perfect health. He croaked of a massive heart attack. He was in an organization that pushes calcium as the cure to all diseases. Let's see. I think this is the last one on this paper. So I may not go through all the heart disease stuff. You guys can look at all the references. Questions remain as to whether taking extra calcium as calcium supplements is helpful to the general population. Wait, they're doubting it completely? What is the real value of calcium intake by supplements per day for different individuals? Could it do more harm rather than good, particularly taking into consideration the increased risk of other diseases? Could it look amazing short term, even over months, even over a couple years? And could it turn absolutely deadly? Some of you are going to get to find out. And if you want to double down and prove me wrong, you go right ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. So, let's just hit on this paper. This was a reevaluation of studies. Calcium does not protect against colorectal neoplasia, colon cancer. And they start here. Calcium could decrease the risk of colorectal neoplasia by binding bowel irritating compounds, toxic bile, and diminishing mucosal preparation or proliferation. What do they say at the end? These results that they reanalyzed all these meta-analysis studies, these results do not support the hypothesis that calcium prevents colon cancer. Whoops. All these people were saying it does. Oh, this is the one I wanted to go over. Okay. So a lot of people in the really pro-calcium supplement group out there have been saying they are sure this is not a duration paradox effect where things look good in the short term and fall apart and cause the exact problems they're claimed to fix in the long term. They're saying that. And I understand they're on their honeymoon phase and they think I missed out on something wonderful and all their problems are going to go away forever. Duration paradox can take a long time to happen. Let's look at this. Calcium and vitamin D supplementation and increased risk of serrated polyps results from a randomized clinical trial. I'm going to tell you right now before I read it, these are precancerous lesions in the intestines. Serrated lesions such as sessile serrated adenomas or polyps, SSAPs, are important colorectal cancer precursors. But etiological causal factors for these lesions are largely unknown. We aim to determine the effects of calcium and vitamin D supplementation on the incidence of serrated polyps in general and hyperplastic polyps and SSAPs specifically. Okay. Participants with one or more adenomas at baseline were randomized to receive 1,200 milligrams a day of elemental calcium, 1,000 units a day of vitamin D3, both or neither agent. Treatment continued for 3 or 5 years. 3 or 5 years of either calcium, vitamin D, both or neither. What happened? In the treatment phase, the 3 or 5 years, there was no effect of either calcium or vitamin D on the incidence of SSAP. So they all got about the same amount. If they showed up, if they had problems, the people who didn't get either of them, let's say the people who got calcium or vitamin D or both or neither, there was no difference between them. However, during the later observational phase, this is years 6 to 10, we observed elevated risks of SSAPs associated with calcium alone and calcium and vitamin D treatment. 2.66 times higher risk. Calcium and vitamin D, 3.82 times higher. 6 to 10 years. So they took the calcium from either years 1 to 3 or years 1 to 5. And they said there wasn't much of a difference between any of the groups in the first 5 years. But years 6 to 10, whoopsie, the problems start showing. The cracks. In a large multi-center chemoprevention study, we found evidence that calcium and vitamin D supplementation increased the risk of SSAPs. This appeared to be a late effect, 6 to 10 years after supplementation began. These possible risks must be weighed against the benefits of calcium and vitamin D supplementation. So we have one paper saying that all these other papers that said calcium supplements reduce colon cancer were wrong. And then we have this paper showing long-term calcium supplementation increased precancerous growths in the intestine. I mean, you can FAFO, I guess. Okay. Now, association of oral calcium intake with osteoarthritis progression and knee replacement. Data from the Osteoarthritis Initiative. What's one of the things we fix? Arthritic joints. We can actually resorb the calcium from these joints. Do you think if you're putting in a ton of calcium at the same time as you're trying to absorb calcium out of the soft tissues, that's going to work? You think your body's going to be like, oh, wait, no, this is good calcium. Keep this, but this is bad calcium. Take this out. No, we kind of have to, you only want to push one button at a time. Okay. And if you're going to do calcium, do it dietarily. So KR means knee replacement. KL means Kellgren and Lawrence score. JSW is a decrease in the joint space width. And clinical progression was defined as increase in Western Ontario and McMaster. This is the score as to how bad they're getting. Okay. At baseline, every 100 milligrams of oral calcium supplementation, but not nutritional intake. Let me repeat that. Every 100 milligrams of oral calcium supplementation, but not nutritional intake, was associated with a Kellgren and Lawrence score increase. So they got worse arthritis and risk of knee replacement. In the follow-up visits, each additional year of calcium supplementation after enrollment was associated with an increase in this score, the KL score, the WOMAC score, and knee replacement risk. Every 100 milligrams it went up from supplementation, and then every year it went up that they were supplementing. We're going to say it again. Conclusions. Both baseline and follow-up history of oral calcium supplementation, but not nutritional calcium intake, was associated with knee osteoarthritis progression and knee replacement. Prove me wrong. Go ahead. Okay, so again, this is chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular complications of calcium supplementation in chronic kidney disease. Oh, I got to post. I'm going to post on Twitter, the gentleman who sent me his labs where he went from stage 4 chronic kidney disease, which is right before kidney failure. He's completely out of it. Lab tested. Fixed severe chronic. We helped him fix his severe chronic kidney disease, and we have labs to prove it. Multiple labs over years. So that's kind of cool. We didn't give him calcium supplements. Imagine that. Okay, this is important. So for those of you who are going to start going out and you're taking mega dose supplements and you're going to start monitoring, let's say your your ionized calcium and your serum calcium, and you're going to try to keep track of it. Even in the absence of overt hypercalcemia, calcium supplementation may be associated with a positive calcium balance and intracellular calcium overload. Let's pay close attention to what this means. The labs could look just fine. You might be in the normal calcium range, but you could be gaining too much calcium over time. You're gaining more than you're losing, even though your blood test looks fine. And inside your cells, you are getting an overload of calcium while your blood test looks fine. There is an increased risk of complex supraventricular, ventricular arrhythmias, or the risk of suffering a cardiac arrest in the presence of hypercalcemia and calcium overload in subjects with impaired or absent renal functions. What they're saying is if your kidneys can't clear enough calcium, you can have heart problems. What do they suggest? A maximum intake of 1,000 milligrams elemental calcium, combining supplements and dietary calcium, together with a 1.5 millimole per liter level in the dialysate. So they're talking about like dialysis people here, may be a safer opinion-based recommendation in chronic kidney disease patients. This is especially the case if the patient already shows signs of extraskeletal calcification or if they present cardiac comorbidity. So if they've already got heart disease, calcium problem, Or if they've already got like bone spurs, atherosclerosis, if they know they have calcifications in places already, don't give them extra calcium. Or maybe even less. Don't do supplements. I'm gonna not go through all the heart disease, because if you guys can see up here, these are, let me see what else I have before I get to the heart disease. Oh, cross-sectional association between blood cholesterol and calcium levels in genetically diverse strains of mice. So remember, the two big things that they'll talk about that plug up your arteries. Well, they talk about cholesterol a lot, right? Which is 80% of it's made by your liver. So you should be thinking that if you have high cholesterol, you have a liver problem. And then the other thing, they measure coronary artery calcium score. Wait, so what's the relationship between cholesterol and calcium in genetically diverse? So multiple strains of mice, multiple different genetic strains of mice. We find expected elevations of cholesterol in male mice, as well as in mice with elevated serum triglycerides and or fed a high-fat sucrose diet. So they expect these things to happen. The third strongest predictor was serum calcium. So they were talking about things that were predicting like heart disease, basically. Oh, blood cholesterol level and calcium levels. Okay, so we find expected elevations of cholesterol in male mice as well as in mice with elevated serum triglycerides and or fed a high-fat, high sucrose diet, like the Western American diet. Oh, but it's going to be tallow and it's going to be real sugar. Okay. That'll fix all the fast food problems if we just use tallow for the French fries and we just use real sugar in the soda. Okay. The third strongest predictor was serum calcium, which correlated with serum cholesterol across both diets and sexes. Higher cholesterol went with higher calcium. Wait, what are the things that make up heart disease again? What are the things that plug your arteries? Cholesterol and calcium. That's a weird coincidence. This is in line with several human cohort studies. Oh, so they've basically repeated this in humans, which show associations between calcium and cholesterol, and calcium as an independent predictor of cardiovascular events. Oops. Wait, what if we have one of the human papers here? Serum calcium increase correlates with worsening of lipid profile. An observational study on a large cohort from South Italy. Several studies suggest that calcium supplementation might be associated with an increased risk of coronary heart disease. We observed a significant association between total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, the bad stuff, HDL cholesterol, the supposedly good stuff, non-HDL cholesterol, triglycerides, and serum calcium in men and postmenopausal women. Interestingly, in premenopausal women, we only found a direct correlation between serum calcium, total cholesterol, and HDL cholesterol. Calcium significantly increased while increasing total cholesterol and triglycerides in men and postmenopausal women. Well, premenopausal women still have their periods, so they have an extra detox. What do men and postmenopausal women not have? They don't have a cycle. So they lose that route of detox. Our results confirm that progressive increase in serum calcium level correlates with worsening of lipid profile in our study population. Therefore, we suggest that a greater caution should be used in calcium supplement prescription, particularly in men and women undergoing menopause. Particularly in men and women undergoing menopause. Commas are important. In which an increase of serum lipids is already known to be associated with a higher cardiovascular risk. So you got high cholesterol, got high triglycerides. Well, hopefully you took your flush niacin to help fix those, which we sell. But also high serum. Well, wait, what causes an increase in serum calcium? Well, rat poison vitamin D3 supplements do. Vitamin A toxicity does. Calcium supplements would do that. What's milk? What are they fortifying our foods with? That's weird. Wait, did they find a cholesterol problem? And then they want to give everybody statins? They go so crazy about statins, they want to put statins in the water? What if they just didn't screw us all up on the calcium front? Imagine that. Okay, so I am not going to go through all of these papers. I'm going to read the titles. You can go and look at them if you want. Calcium supplements and risk of cardiovascular disease, a meta-analysis of clinical trials. Associations of dietary calcium intake and calcium supplementation with myocardial infarction and stroke risk and overall cardiovascular mortality as in risk of death in the Heidelberg cohort of the European Prospective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition Study. Calcium intake from diet and supplements and the risk of coronary artery calcification and its progression among older adults. 10-year follow-up of the multi-ethnic study of atherosclerosis. Well, since they mentioned dietary in the title, let's just hit this one again. After accounting for total calcium intake, calcium supplement use was associated with an increased risk for incident coronary artery calcium score. High total calcium intake was associated with a decreased risk of incident atherosclerosis over long-term follow-up, particularly if achieved without supplement use. However, calcium supplement use may increase the risk for incident coronary artery calcium score. Excessive dietary calcium intake, particularly from overconsumption of calcium supplements taken to prevent or treat osteoporosis, may have unintended health consequences. Wait, the law of unintended consequences? I think I mentioned that. The well-known Milk-Alkali syndrome has been increasing in incidence attributed to the widespread use of over-the-counter calcium supplements like Tums, like calcium carbonate. Supplements contribute to calcium loading, i.e. excessive calcium amounts in a single dose or bolus, which leads to an increase in urinary calcium excretion in adults with normal renal function, with or without hypercalcemia, so with high calcium in their blood or without it, and possibly to soft tissue or ectopic calcification of soft tissues. Gallagher et al. Recently found that 9% of women taking calcium supplements had outright evidence of hypercalcemia, high blood calcium, and 31% had excessive calcium in their urine. This one say dietary? Well, sure. Why don't we look at this one too then? In comparison with non-users of any supplements, users of calcium supplements had a statistically significantly increased MI, myocardial infarction, heart attack risk. Oh, sorry. Let me zoom for Joe. Which was more pronounced for calcium supplement only users. Calcium supplement only users, their risk was more pronounced. Conclusions: increasing calcium intake from diet might not confer significant cardiovascular benefits. Okay. More calcium in the diet might not give heart disease benefits, but it's not making anything worse. While calcium supplements, which might raise heart attack risk, should be taken with caution. So if I see that these are showing a difference between diet and supplements, I'll go into them. But otherwise, calcium supplement, we already talked about this Korean one. We talked about that in the previous paper. Vascular events in healthy older women receiving calcium supplementation. Randomized control trial. This is another bad. All these are bad, just so you know. I'm not reading them to save you some time. Again, this was the Kuopio osteoporosis risk factor and prevention study. We went over that one. You can remember all these are on that list of the references I have. Oh, here's a fun one. Calcium supplementation and inflammation increase mortality, risk of death in those with rheumatoid arthritis. So we already know calcium supplements worsen osteoarthritis, and now calcium supplements and inflammation go up along with the risk of death in those with rheumatoid arthritis. Effect of calcium supplements on the risk of myocardial infarction and cardiovascular events, a meta-analysis. Let's keep going. Oh, this one didn't. Unusual traffic coming from your network. Oh, no. Oh, seriously? Okay. Hold on. Let me put it on this one. Let's share this tab. Let me close this one. And then let's try to reopen it. There it is. Why it did that, I have no idea. Okay, so Joe, this is that link. Calcium supplementation in patients with chronic heart failure. Is it safe? Why do they have to ask that question? Why are they literally asking that question? Because it's not safe? Let me find the next one. Effects of calcium on cardiovascular events in patients with kidney disease and in a healthy population. It's bad for both of them. Calcium supplements, I mean. Calcium supplements controversy in osteoporosis, a physiological mechanism supporting cardiovascular adverse effects. I think this might be one that had... no, that's not the one I wanted to... we already went over how they'll say, well, we got to weigh the risk of your bones versus your death. Oh, the calcium debate. Strong bones at the expense of cardiovascular health. Calcium supplements with or without vitamin D and the risk of cardiovascular events. Reanalysis of the Women's Health Initiative, limited across access data set and meta-analysis. I'm going to hit on this one because I believe this one says something interesting. Calcium or calcium and vitamin D increase the risk of heart attack and the composite of myocardial infarction, heart attack, or stroke. Calcium supplements with or without vitamin D modestly increase the risk of cardiovascular events. Yep. Especially heart attacks. What got Challen? The RBTI calcium guy? Oh, and folks, remember, he was perfect health. He had perfect numbers. And suddenly he dies of a heart attack. I'm going to tell you folks who are doing really crazy doses of calcium supplements, like I'm going to say more than 500 milligrams a day of supplements. I'm going to say it again. Those of you who are doing crazy doses of calcium supplements, and what I'm saying, a mega dose of calcium supplements, I'm saying that's 500 milligrams or more of supplements a day. If and when the heart attack comes, there may already be heart issues showing up. There may already be. If and when the heart attack comes, it doesn't give you a warning. It just hits. Associations of habitual calcium supplementation with risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality, death in individuals with and without diabetes. It's not a good result. Long-term calcium intake and rates of all-cause and cardiovascular mortality, community-based prospective longitudinal cohort study. Risk of ischemic stroke associated with calcium supplements with or without vitamin D. Oh, I already did this one. Okay, so you can see all those links if you want to look at the papers. I'm going to tell you that every single one of those studies, when they looked at calcium supplements, was bad. Okay? It was all bad. Now let's go to the next one. Okay, I'm going to do this quick because, I'm getting a little bored, and you guys are probably getting a little bored because I hammer on these things so hard that it's a lot of stuff. And if you can see, look at all these links. Okay. People will talk about calcium binding bile and bile salts. So it can do that in your gut, yes, but it also does it in your gallbladder. Calcium binds to bile in your gallbladder, and guess what it forms? Gallstones. I'm going to hit on a couple of these. Increased biliary calcium, bile calcium in the bile in cholesterol gallstone formation. The hypothesis that biliary calcium levels increased during cholesterol gallstone formation was tested in a prairie dog gallstone model. Why didn't they do this in humans? They haven't done any calcium supplementing gallstone studies in humans. In addition to the previously documented changes in biliary lipid composition, animals with gallstones had a significant increase in gallbladder bile concentrations of total and free calcium compared with control animals. What raises free calcium? Oh, supplements do. The observation that liver bile levels of calcium remained unchanged in the cholesterol-fed animals suggests that the increase in gallbladder bile calcium is due to a gallbladder-related phenomenon rather than an alteration in hepatic and liver metabolism. We propose that this increase in bile calcium levels results from an increase in gallbladder absorption. Increased biliary calcium levels may be an important, previously unrecognized factor in the pathogenesis, the disease creation of cholesterol gallstones. Do I need to read this paper? This was another prairie dog study. Oral calcium supplements promote pigment gallstone formation. It is a prairie dog study, but funny thing, I can't find a single study in people where they look at calcium supplementation and gallstones. Why when we have these multiple studies, all these studies on bile and calcium and gallstones, why can't I find a single study on gallstones and calcium supplementation in humans? We have recently demonstrated that 5 days of oral calcium supplementation significantly increases bile calcium in the prairie dog. We hypothesized that it would promote pigment gallstone formation. Pigment stones and calcium bilirubinate, bound to calcium sludge. You ever heard of sludge in your gallbladder? Were present in all animals receiving calcium supplementation. This observation raises concern that oral calcium supplementation, especially in the older female population, may enhance gallstone formation. Why haven't they done any studies then? When was this paper? 89, I think. 89. Wait, we're almost 40 years later and they haven't done a single study on people about calcium supplements causing gallstones. You can't find it. Changes in serum calcium levels influence bile calcium levels in humans. Shocking. Hey, here's a new term to learn about. Porcelain gallbladder. Porcelain gallbladder refers to the condition in which the inner gallbladder wall is encrusted with calcium. Okay. Limy bile, milk of calcium bile associated with gallstones, discovered incidentally during laparoscopic cholecystectomy. They were going to remove somebody's gallbladder because they got gallstones, and they find limy bile, milk of calcium bile. Okay. Calcium in human gallbladder bile. Why are they doing so many of these studies? The role of biliary calcium in gallstone disease creation. Here, I'm gonna hit this one. This I gotta go, Joe. I gotta go to my other screen. Let me go there. Let me see. Where's my share? There it is. Screen. Entire screen. Okay, so we're on that. Here we go. So here, recent studies. Let me zoom in a little bit. Recent studies suggest that alternation in serum calcium influences the level of gallbladder bile ionized free calcium. Theoretically, this could increase the risk of calcium precipitation or crystallization, stone formation in the gallbladder. In a recent large nested case control study, we demonstrated that patients with gallstones have increased serum levels of total calcium and magnesium. The calcium's going up. Your body will increase the magnesium in the blood to try to counteract, to keep you from calcifying. So watching magnesium go up doesn't mean these people took enough magnesium. It means that the magnesium is going up to try to counter the high calcium so you don't turn into a statue. Okay? Similar findings were observed in the present study, but in much smaller groups. Even the mean values, the average values remained within the normal reference limits used by our laboratory, except for total calcium. I'm trying to tell you that even though if you're trying to do blood tests for calcium to try to see that, to try to stop this from happening or to try to monitor it, you might still end up with big problems. Is that all I have on this one? Yeah. Okay. So now let's go back here. Calcium and calcium binding in human gallstone disease. Absorption of biliary calcium, bile calcium from the canine gallbladder. Protection against the formation of calcium-containing gallstones. I want you to understand what this is saying. They're saying that these dogs, the absorption of calcium by the gallbladder, so the dog is actually absorbing calcium out of the bile in the gallbladder, putting it back into the system. Now, once I say that, so remember that they're saying that the dog's gallbladder is absorbing calcium out of it. So it's lowering the calcium in the bile. The absorption of free calcium, that's what this means, by the gallbladder may be a factor in the prevention of pigment gallstones because it limits free calcium ion in the bile and thus decreases the likelihood of precipitation of calcium. You want to know what creates more gallstones? More calcium and more alkalinity. What is calcium carbonate? It's calcium and it's alkaline. Both the calcium and the carbonate are alkaline. And there's calcium carbonate gallstones. There's literally calcium carbonate gallstones. Calcium and carbonate ion concentrations in gallbladder and hepatic bile. Calcium carbonate is a major component of gallstones. So do you think if you take a lot of calcium carbonate, you might end up with gallstones? And if you're missing your gallbladder, where do you think all that's going to go? But there are few data on calcium and carbonate concentrations in human bile. Gallbladder bile pH, acidity, alkalinity, correlated positively with total carbon dioxide, carbonate, and calcium carbonate. Positively means the more carbon dioxide, the more carbonate, the more calcium, and the more calcium carbonate, the pH went up. pH being going up is alkaline. Over 7, if it's going up, that's moving towards alkaline. So the more calcium and carbonate they had, the more alkaline it was. These data suggest that the human gallbladder acidifies bile by secreting hydrogen ions, and that impairment of this secretion is one cause of calcified gallstone formation in humans. So they're saying your body's trying to make the bile more acidic so you don't create gallstones and calcify, right? You can dissolve. You ever done this in your shower where you put like vinegar in a bowl and you put it on your calcified shower head and the vinegar dissolves the calcium deposits because it's acidic, right? So if you make yourself more alkaline, you tend to crust up and calcify and precipitate more. Your gallbladder is trying to prevent that by acidifying the bile. What do you think happens if you take too much calcium and too much carbonate over time? What do you think that does to your acidity? One of my teachers in naturopathic medical school said, he was a pretty smart guy. He said that one of the things that causes problems in the human body, one of the biggest things that he thought was causing problems in the human body was parts of your body that are supposed to be acidic are too alkaline, and parts of your body that are supposed to be alkaline are too acidic. Do you see how throwing in Tums every day could screw up this balance? Increased activity of ionized free calcium in gallbladder bile in gallstone disease. Remember, supplements increase free calcium. Oh, this is a fun one. Variation of calcium, copper, and iron levels in serum, bile, and stone samples of patients having different types of gallstone. A comparative study. I like this one. Epidemiological data among the human population has shown a significantly increased incidence of gallstone disease worldwide. Wait, did I go over Did I go over the chemical trails yet? I think I might have missed that one. I might have skipped that. We need to go back. So they're seeing a significantly increased incidence of gallstones worldwide. Calcium concentrations in serum samples were significantly higher in patients with pigmented gallstones as compared to people who didn't have them. Bile calcium concentrations of patients, people who had gallstones, were found to be higher than controls. Okay, so we got blood calcium's higher, bile calcium's higher. The difference ended up being significant for pigmented gallstone patients. The contents of copper and iron in the serum and bile of all patients, gallstone people, were found to be higher than the control. Gosh, what do we try to fix a lot? Iron overload and copper toxicity? The difference was significant in those patients who had gallstones. So the gallstone people had an even bigger difference. The pigmented gallstone people had an even bigger difference. So there's gallstones and then there's the pigmented gallstones. The concentrations of calcium, iron, and copper in different types of gallstones were found in the order pigmented was greater than mixed was greater than cholesterol. The bile to serum ratio for calcium, copper, and iron was found to be significantly higher in pigmented gallstone patients. So they had more calcium, more copper, and more iron in their bile compared to their blood. Toxic bile, anybody? Gallbladder bile was slightly alkaline in patients as compared to reference. Didn't we just go over a paper where it said that the gallbladder was trying to acidify the bile so it didn't create stones? Gallbladder bile was slightly alkaline in patients as compared to references. The people who had gallstones had more alkaline bile. The density or the thickness of the bile, the viscosity, was found to be higher in patients as compared to the controls. Okay, so that's all I'm going to go on this. You guys can look at those references. They are in the links that are in the paper. And oh wait, yeah, we're done on that one. Now, I have heard of megadosing calcium carbonate, and some people are also starting to megadose dairy. What if this had all already been done before and it didn't end well then either? Let's talk about good old Mr. Sippy, or Dr. Sippy. Sippy of the Sippy diet regimen. He was a doctor, an ardent believer, a strong believer in Schwartz's dictum, no acid, no ulcer. So they decided that ulcers were caused by stomach acid, and if they just shut down the acid, they would make the ulcer go away. He promoted for the treatment of acute peptic ulcer disease a strict regimen of hourly milk and cream feedings, supplemented by frequent large doses of antacids, and often by periodic gastric aspiration. So they would just suck everything out of their stomach, probably put a tube down their throat and suck it out. A generation of physicians, one generation, found this to be a highly effective means of hastening the healing of peptic ulcers. Okay, so fix one disease, maybe create another. Unfortunately, the Sippy regimen did little to prevent ulcer recurrence. You mean it didn't fix the root cause? The root cause was not a lack of Tums and milk? And Sippy's program was later superseded by more efficacious therapy. Okay. So what did Sippy's stuff tend to cause? It's called Milk-Alkali syndrome. Too much milk, too much alkalinity. They've changed the name now. We'll get to that. They call it Calcium-Alkali syndrome now. Milk-Alkali syndrome is characterized by a triad of elevated calcium levels, metabolic alkalosis, too much alkalinity, and acute kidney injury because the kidneys are processing too much calcium that commonly occurs due to the combined intake of large amounts of calcium and absorbable alkali. Oh, I don't know, like carbonate. The syndrome can have an acute onset. It comes on suddenly. You think everything's fine, and then everything's not fine. With the rapid development of hypercalcemia and, if left untreated, may cause acute renal failure and metastatic calcification. Calcification all over your body. The Milk-Alkali syndrome was first recognized in the early 20th century, when Bertram Sippy introduced a treatment regimen for peptic ulcer disease. You fix one disease and you create another. The Sippy regimen consisted of multiple daily doses of milk and cream combined with absorbable alkali such as magnesium oxide. So you can use too much magnesium oxide, that's alkaline, sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, or bismuth subcarbonate to protect the gastric ulcer from further erosion by gastric acid. Carbonate. It's too much alkalinity with too much calcium. Soon after, various Soon after, Sippy started coming out with this. Soon after, not right away, soon after, various toxic effects were reported, including hypercalcemia and metabolic alkalosis. And some cases of acute kidney injury were also reported. With the advent of newer drugs for treating peptic ulcer disease, such as histamine type 2 receptor blockers, in the 1980s, the syndrome virtually vanished from the world. Recently, however, more cases of milk-alkali syndrome have been reported. This is likely due to the common use of over-the-counter calcium preparations for preventing and treating osteoporosis in women who are postmenopausal. Calcium carbonate is also frequently prescribed to patients with chronic kidney disease to prevent secondary hyperparathyroidism. Various scholars have also suggested changing the syndrome's name to calcium-alkali syndrome due to the changing cause of the disease. Milk-alkali syndrome now accounts for more than 10% of the cases of hypercalcemia and is the third most common cause of hypercalcemia in hospitalized patients, after hyperparathyroidism and hypercalcemia of malignancy. Milk and cream and lots of antacids. Calcium carbonate is an antacid. Milk-alkali syndrome. So, the signs and symptoms of milk-alkali syndrome can develop after only a few days and up to several months. Wait, we've heard that. Following the initial ingestion of absorbable calcium and alkali. However, the severity of signs and symptoms of milk-alkali syndrome is largely dependent upon the duration and quantity of calcium and alkali ingested. Acute milk-alkali syndrome, the one that comes on quickly, they don't talk about how long it might take to come on. It can happen suddenly, like a heart attack, is characterized by several biochemical alterations, mainly alkalosis, hypochloremia, hypokalemia, and hypercalcemia. Hypercalcemia will cause hypokalemia. I'll show you the research. In the acute phase of milk-alkali syndrome, called the Cope syndrome, the first symptoms of toxicity are nausea, vomiting, anorexia, not wanting to eat, headache, dizziness, vertigo, apathy, weakness, confusion, irritability, dry mouth, and repulsion to milk. The body is trying to save you. In individuals with chronic milk-alkali syndrome, Burnett syndrome, so long-term, symptoms may include muscle aches, psychosis, tremor, polyuria, producing large volumes of dilute urine. We have had reports of calcium supplementers already having frequent urination. Polydipsia, intense thirst. Pruritus, itchy sensation on the skin. That's not a good sign for your liver. Band keratopathy and abnormal calcifications. These abnormal calcium deposits often collect metastatically in the body, including throughout the periarticular tissue, that's the joints, subcutaneous tissue, central nervous system, liver, kidneys, adrenal, bones, and lungs. If ingestion of calcium and alkali is continued, neurologic symptoms such as memory loss, personality changes, lethargy, stupor, and coma will persistently develop over time as a result of the extreme hypercalcemia and electrolyte imbalances. Now, I want to say some people have been reporting that when they take enough calcium, they start feeling really relaxed, like a calm comes over them, and they say their limbs feel warm and all this stuff. I mean, that's a drug effect if I ever heard one. But I want you to understand, you know what? That's like a sedative effect. Okay, that's a sedative effect. Lethargy and stupor, if you know what those words mean, sedation would be the early stage of lethargy and stupor. These things have these things have a spectrum. So people now are sometimes dosing their calcium carbonate based on when they get to this sedative effect. That's how they're determining their dose, and it seems to be moving up over time. Okay. If you guys want to watch a video on this, the calcium alkali syndrome part 2, this video goes over how the alkalosis can take a while. Insidious is the word. It insidiously grows until the problem is too much for your system to handle. So I'm not going to go through all these, but antacids revisited, a review of their clinical pharmacology and recommended therapeutic use. Let's see if this was important. Most adverse effects from antacids are minor with periodic use of small amounts. Is that what we're talking about here? No. However, when large doses are taken for long periods of time, significant adverse effects may occur, especially in patients with underlying diseases such as chronic renal failure. These adverse effects can be reduced, not eliminated, by monitoring of electrolyte status. So if you're out there taking high-dose calcium and you're not even monitoring your calcium levels, good luck. And you're not monitoring your pHs, good luck. Milk-Alkali syndrome, a quick ease or a long-lasting problem. Person had been doing, they present with 65-year-old woman, hypercalcemia, confusion, myalgias, muscle pain, and abdominal discomfort. She has also metabolically alkalosis. A history of significant quick ease use, a calcium carbonate-based antacid for abdominal discomfort for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. Suggested a diagnosis of Milk-Alkali syndrome. I don't think there was anything else. Calcium ingestion leading to Milk-Alkali syndrome can occur at intakes as low as 1 to 1.5 grams per day. They're talking about elemental calcium in those with risk factors. You want to FAFO? I mean, go ahead. Effect of antacids on mineral metabolism. Side effects of antacid therapy like calcium carbonate are dose dependent. The more you take, the more side effects. And compound related, of course they are. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate ingestion. Now, when we're talking about buffering flush niacin, the sodium bicarbonate is not there anymore. It's not alkaline anymore. When you react an acid with a bicarb, it's not, the bicarbonate turns into, what does it turn into? Water and carbon dioxide. I believe that's what it does. Kelsey's the chemist. But that's what it does. So it's not the bicarbonate anymore. So if you're using baking soda or potassium bicarbonate to buffer properly, this doesn't exist anymore once the fizzing has happened, okay? So baking soda ingestion provokes metabolic alkalosis and alkaluria. So your urine becomes too alkaline. Your blood becomes too alkaline. Remember how we talked about the more alkaline you are, the more stones you form. The, quote, non-systemic calcium and magnesium containing antacids cause these changes too, but to a lower degree. Urinary pH elevation favors the precipitation of the crystallization of calcium and magnesium salts, predisposing to renal stone, kidney stone formation. In patients with lack of kidney function, renal insufficiency, the calcium and magnesium absorption may lead rapidly to toxic serum concentrations because they can't clear it. Pay attention here, because this is where I think some people are getting messed up. So they're taking calcium carbonate to the point where it suppresses acidity enough. I think that may be part of why people feel good. But then what happens? Calcium and magnesium containing acids, antacids they mean, may provoke an acid rebound. So your body fights against this and it makes even more acid to counteract all the alkalinity you're putting in it. So I think when some people are having to escalate their doses, they're having to get to the point where they can suppress the body's fighting back with acid, and they try to shut it down even more. Oh, a case of the milk. So how little can it take? A case of the Milk-Alkali syndrome with a small amount of milk and magnesium oxide ingestion. 200 milliliters a day. What is that? A liter is 16 ounces? No, a liter is, that's a pint. Liter's 32 ounces-ish. So we're talking a fifth of that. So we're talking like 6-7 ounces of milk and ice cream, 145 grams a day. Don't tell Peters that people only ate that much. And the administration of small doses of absorbable alkali. This is why when you're messing around with acids and bases, if you're taking alkaline things that are not buffering something else, and you take a lot of calcium, you can mess yourself up. So she was taking it for the treatment of chronic constipation. present case could be distinguished from any other cases previously reported with regard to the amount of calcium, 400 milligrams a day, and alkali, 36 MEQs a day. So this was like, again, anything could cause anything in anybody, potentially. So this lady ate a little bit of calcium, 400 milligrams of calcium a day, and she took something to help her poop, the magnesium oxide. And the alkalinity plus the calcium for this woman was too much. How do you want to find out if it was too much for you? Wow, nice title. Calcium carbonate toxicity. 3 cases. Milk-Alkali syndrome associated with calcium carbonate consumption. 7 patients with PTH screwed up, and an estimate of prevalence among patients hospitalized with hypercalcemia. Lessons of the month: over-the-counter antacids causing hypercalcemia, the emergence of calcium-alkali syndrome. This woman, the dosage was reported to be approximately 1,800 milligrams of elemental calcium a day, which would constitute only a marginal increase on the recommended intake for daily elemental calcium. Remember how I said the safety margin is a joke? Safety margin is a joke. She was within the safety margin, the tolerable upper limit. Oh, this one doesn't have one. Oh, we'll just hit on this real quick. Okay. Biofilms. You hear a lot about biofilms. How everybody's like, oh, you got to bust your biofilms. And okay. Calcium carbonate mineralization is essential for biofilm formation and lung colonization. You want to feed the biofilms? Go ahead. Unraveling the significance of calcium as a biofilm promotion signal for Bacillus licheniformis strains isolated from dairy products. Huh. They must really love the dairy because it's got plenty of calcium. Calcium prevents biofilm dispersion in Bacillus subtilis. So the biofilms don't break apart like they should. These results indicate that calcium structurally stabilizes biofilms and causes resistance to biofilm dispersion mechanisms. I don't think you want that. Let's keep going. Oh, I wanted to cover a couple of things because there had been some statements made that like niacin, flesh niacin causes calcium problems. So if flesh niacin caused calcium problems, it should worsen osteoporosis, right? Shouldn't it? Let's just look at this. Association of dietary niacin intake with osteoporosis in the postmenopausal women in the U.S. NHANES 2007-2018. Conclusion: dietary niacin intake exhibited an inverse correlation with the incidence of osteoporosis. The risk of osteoporosis was significantly reduced by 13% with every 10 milligrams a day increase in daily dietary niacin consumption among postmenopausal women. Niacin is directly anti-osteoporosis. There were people out there claiming that niacin causes problems with calcium and with the bones. Do we care about petri dish studies, in vitro stuff? No, we care about real people over real years. Okay? 10 milligrams a day. So like we have our 25 milligram flesh niacin pills. We have in Keystone Minerals with the ones with niacin, there's 112 milligrams of niacin per pill. Osteoporosis reduced by 13% with every 10 milligram a day increase. Okay, so let's go into the next one. It was also said that zeolite was going to ruin calcium balance in the body and cause all sorts of calcium problems. Wow, it's weird that they went treatment of osteoporosis with a modified zeolite. Shows beneficial effects in an osteoporotic rat model and a human clinical trial. Wait, so we have a rat study and a human clinical trial? The data derived from in vivo in the whole organism studies in an overreactomized rat model and from randomized double-blind placebo-controlled human clinical study. Well, they got the magic words there. Both studies involve treatment with Panaceo microactivation zeolite, clinoptilolite. This is what the R zeolite with a Y. All good zeolites are clinoptilolite. A defined cation exchange clinoptilolite, which clearly improved all bone histomorphometric parameters examined from overreactomized animals, so they had their ovaries removed, indicative for increased bone formation. Moreover, intervention with PMA zeolite clinoptilolite for 1 year proved safe in humans. Furthermore, patients treated with PMA zeolite clinoptilolite showed an increase in bone mineral density, an elevated level of markers indicative of bone formation, a significant reduction in pain, and significantly improved quality of life compared with patients in the control placebo group. These encouraging positive effects of PMA zeolite clinoptilolite on bone integrity and on osteoporosis warrant further evaluation of treatment with PMA zeolite clinoptilolite as a new alternative adjuvant therapy for osteoporosis. So, yeah, we saw that some people were making false claims about calcium and flesh niacin and zeolite. And so this was just one small thing to correct the incorrect stuff that was being put out there. Oh, and our zeolite with a Y. If you guys were interested in getting some of our zeolite with a Y, that's what I call it. It's in the store. We have it out now. It's there. You can get it. Make sure you read the instructions. They're linked on the bottle, the jar, and they are linked on the product page. Don't skip the instructions. That's what I'm telling my kids these days. I'm like, read the instructions. Oh, here's an interesting one. Let's go over this one. The effect of cimetidine treatment on ethanol formation in the human stomach. We make alcohol in our stomachs? What does shutting down stomach acid do to that? Okay. Significant ethanol concentrations, as in alcohol, ranging from 1 to 27 millimoles per liter, were found in a subgroup of 29 patients receiving cimetidine or antacids. The average alcohol concentration in these patients was higher 1 to 2 hours after a liquid meal, the antacid or the cimetidine people, than in the fasting state. They're making more alcohol. The alcohol concentration correlated significantly with the pH of the gastric juice. Higher pH, more alcohol. That's what it means. They correlated significantly. Higher alkalinity, you're making more alcohol in your stomach. Gosh, could that actually have a sedative effect too? Do people feel more relaxed when they take alcohol? Yeah, that's why they do it after work, right? It is assumed that an increase in the yeast and or bacterial population due to the reduction of gastric acidity induced by cimetidine or antacids is responsible for the enhanced production of ethanol. So they're assuming that you got more bad stuff growing in your stomach because your stomach acid is not keeping control of it because you're shutting it down either with pharmaceutical or OTC antacids or straight up antacids like baking soda or calcium carbonate or anything else that is alkaline that you're taking enough of to shut down your stomach acid. And I just thought I'd go over this one. Hypercalcemia will cause hypokalemia. Okay, so too much calcium in your blood depletes your potassium. Vitamin D rat poison supplements have been shown to deplete potassium. Vitamin A has been shown to block potassium channels. Isn't that weird? They all supplement, fortified together and they're all in milk together. That's weird. I forgot to mark this one. This was one I think was on the this was just one. Okay, so they're talking about on the presence of insoluble salts of calcium, as in calcium oxalate stones and calcium phosphate stones in the kidneys in large amount, in a preponderating, I'm assuming that means in a large majority of cases, and the bearing of this finding upon calcium in gout and allied conditions. So they're trying to link uric acid crystals to calcium precipitating. You can go and read this paper if you want. It's there. Oh, calcium. Now this next one, calcium carbonate scale control, effective material and inhibitors. And do you remember earlier how I said calcium, too much calcium could deplete zinc? Results from the experiments showed that the most effective inhibitor of calcium carbonate precipitation was zinc. And so the effect was linked to dose levels and temperature. So, gosh, I've linked zinc to heart disease before. And if too much calcium depletes zinc, and zinc helps prevent calcium precipitation and crystallization, is that the connection? We know that calcium is an antagonist to magnesium. People with higher calcium relative to magnesium had more diabetes, and magnesium helps with heart disease. So is too much calcium, especially from supplements, potentially quite a problem? Depletes potassium, magnesium, and zinc. Well, that would make sense why calcium supplements might cause long-term problems now, wouldn't it? So this is not inside a human, but it's the best we got. 5 milligrams times per liter, 5 milligrams per liter zinc dose reduced the calcium carbonate scale formation by 35%. And finally, we'll just go over this before I go into the foods. One thing you can do, if you guys want to do it, nixtamalized corn. So nixtamalized corn is corn prepared typically with a calcium hydroxide solution. It basically sort of, I don't know how to say it, it sort of pre-digests the corn in a way. Some of the calcium gets integrated into the corn, and you get better niacin out of the corn too. So you get more niacin, more bioavailable niacin, and you're going to get some calcium out of it too. This gentleman, Fuzzy Chef, did a great answer as to which products in the US are nixtamalized, because not all corn products are nixtamalized. One of the cool things they say, look at this. While you may come across varieties made from non-treated corn flour, be suspicious of anything bright yellow. Most are treated. So what I'm wondering is, does nixtamalization, so if you're not supposed to trust anything bright yellow, which would be vitamin A, does nixtamalization potentially destroy some of the carotenoids in the corn? I don't know. I haven't looked that up yet. So, yeah, so don't assume your corn has been nixtamalized unless it's, read this. Okay. So then I think that is, so I missed something on the first page, or where was it? Did I not? Oh, man. Hold on. Let me open up. I just want you guys to know I did the fortification stuff. Here, Joe, I'll have these in just a second. That's 2021. Yes. Okay. Okay. Let's share this. So remember, Bill Gates wants to fortify your food with calcium carbonate. He wants you to fortify foods with vitamin A. What else does Bill Gates want to do? A Bill Gates venture. This is 2018 or 2021. I'm sorry. Let me do this one first. 2018. They always tell us what's coming. The first sun dimming experiment will test a way to cool Earth. These are the people who love us so much, right? Researchers plan to spray sunlight reflecting particles into the stratosphere, an approach that could ultimately be used to quickly lower the planet's temperature. Okay. Zhen Dai holds up a small glass tube coated with a white powder. Calcium carbonate, a ubiquitous compound used in everything from paper and cement to toothpaste and cake mixes. Whether this innocuous, innocent substance, does it sound innocent anymore to you? Or does it sound like potentially a genocidal tool that they could drop from the sky? Whether this innocuous substance could also help humanity to relieve the ultimate case of indigestion, global warming caused by greenhouse gas pollution. So now they're trying to sell you on calcium carbonate in the sky to save us from global warming. We got social justice in there. We got global warming in there. Like, Once in place, the experiment would release small plumes of calcium carbonate, each of around 100 grams, roughly equivalent to the amount found in an average bottle of off-the-shelf antacid. The balloon would then turn around to observe how the particles disperse. This is how they're testing it. This is obviously not the spraying. The SCOPEX team, so remember the SCOPEX team's initial stratospheric experiments will focus on calcium carbonate, which is expected to absorb less heat than sulfates and to have less impact on ozone. But textbook answers and even Dye's tabletop device can't capture the full picture. We don't know what it would do because it doesn't exist in the stratosphere, Cooch says. Cooch. That sets up a red flag. Oh, the red flags are all over the place. Now let's go to this next one. 2021. A Bill Gates venture aims to spray dust into the atmosphere to block the sun. What could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? The Stratospheric Controlled Perturbation Experiment, SCOPEX. Remember I said to remember that? Launched by Harvard University scientists, aims to examine this solution by spraying non-toxic calcium carbonate dust into the atmosphere, a sun-reflecting aerosol that may offset the effects of global warming. So, calcium carbonate. Did I not go over Tums? I must have missed the Tums too. Yeah, well, even the Tums warns you to not take mega doses of it for more than 2 weeks. I'll just say that. You can go to the Tums website. It's calcium carbonate. So, that is... Hold on. Cancel. Let's get rid of that. Let's go here. Oh yeah, Joe posted the oh yeah, let's get into let me go look at the sheet because I have stuff in there. So I just want you to point out the World Health Organization and the World Bank are studying calcium food fortification. Bill Gates and the people who like the trails of chemicals are potentially using calcium carbonate in the skies. Why would they do that? Because this limestone is super cheap. So they fortify foods with calcium carbonate. They sell it to you over the counter as a drug, as a literal OTC drug called Tums. It is the 277th most prescribed medication in the country by doctors who obviously know a ton about nutrition. You should be looking at all these things, and it does so. Does that discount the fact? Do we need a certain amount of calcium? Do we need a certain amount of calcium? Yes. Do we want calcium to flow properly, which is coming soon? We're going to work on that. We are working on it. That will come soon. We have something that moves calcium in the proper way through the body. It's something that occurs naturally in your body, and we people are doing amazing on it, the people we have testing it out. And then you don't want to do things that screw up your calcium metabolism, like vitamin A, like vitamin D, like copper. Okay? Just like we would say, we want to avoid or minimize toxins in, we want to facilitate the removal of stored toxins, and we want to restore nutrient deficiencies. That's the basis of the Love Your Liver program. Well, here with calcium, we want to get in the order that we should do it. We take out the calcium screwing up toxins. We make sure that calcium can flow right. What happens if we just do those two right? And then after all that, we make sure that there is enough calcium coming into the system from food. If you're going to do supplements, I don't know how it's going to go for you. I'm not going to say you're going to be okay with a certain dose, because I am not that reckless. Oh, let me hit on this before I get to the calcium foods and stuff like that. So, what have we already heard of happening in the megadose calcium crowd? I talked about this earlier. Honeymoon periods. People Mikey went over it earlier. They feel amazing. Everything goes away. And then over the months, that they have to start escalating their dose. And then eventually the benefits fade away and the problems start coming back. But here's what Mikey said, and this is what I've seen. They can't quit the calcium because then they get too much worse. So they have to wean off of it because it's like a drug. Okay? Let me zoom in a little bit. Yes, I've heard of people taking 20 plus grams of elemental calcium a day. Yes, I have heard of this multiple times. This is the escalating doses. Symptom chasing. Again, I talked about this, increasing their doses more and more calcium until the symptoms that pop back up again are suppressed again, and they stay suppressed for a while, and then they pop up again, and then they got to increase their dose. Mikey described this to a T, and I don't even know who Mikey is. I'm really glad you came today, Mikey, because your testimonial is exactly what I see coming, and I want you folks who are in love with mega dosing calcium supplements right now, I'm doing this for you. I'm not here to have some war about calcium. I'm here to help you guys. You guys should know me by now that this is what I do. I was here today saying I was wrong. I have the balls to do that. I have the intelligence to realize that I might have missed something. And here I am trying to help the people out there who are saying terrible things about me and Kelsey. They're saying absolutely terrible things about us, and here I am trying to help them so they don't potentially send themselves to the hospital or die. That's the kind of guy I am. So the people who are, let's say, pushing the sedative effects of the calcium, so they take calcium until they get this sedative effect. Mikey, if you're still here, if you know about this sedative effect that I'm talking about, please comment in the live chat or comment after if you see this later and you get it. And please tell me if it took increasing doses to get to that sedative effect. So what could cause this sedative effect? Oops, wait. Well, we talked about alcohol production. Alcohol is a sedative, right? People take it because it calms them down, takes them out of their work mode or their stress mode. So that's one thing. We already talked about that. What will alkalosis cause in the body otherwise? So like taking too much calcium and too much carbonate over time, or just too much calcium. Constriction of the blood vessels in the brain. So yes, elevated pH constricts blood vessels in the brain, which reduces blood flow. Reduced blood flow to the brain can lead to lightheadedness, dizziness, confusion, drowsiness, and or lethargy. So people feeling all chill. So remember, a sedative effect would happen a long time before what we would call drowsiness and or lethargy. There's like early stages, early lower level symptoms that we might put a different name on. And then there's drowsiness and lethargy. So sedation would be like way before drowsiness and or lethargy. So over time, your body is trying to protect you from the ionized calcium, the free calcium, by increasing albumin production. Okay. Chronic alkalosis increases calcium binding to albumin, reducing free calcium. So your body is desperately trying to save you by making more albumin to bind to the excessive amount of calcium that's coming in. What does this do? This creates a vicious cycle. You need to understand this. So vicious cycle would be like people taking more to suppress something, and then that causes them problems, and then they take more, and that suppresses it, and they take more. So more alkalosis from, let's say, carbonate intake, which means more albumin over time, is made as a protective measure. More albumin means less free calcium because the body's counteracting it. So then what do people do? They take more calcium carbonate to brute force, getting that drug-like sedative effect. More carbonate then equals more alkalosis, and we're back here. And we keep repeating. And on until the system breaks from excessive alkalinity. And that's not even talking about the calcium problem, but the higher the pH goes, the more you calcify, the more you precipitate, the more you crystallize. Okay, a high pH is an alkaline pH in the nervous system can cause sluggish thinking, slowed reflexes, and sedative-like states. There's your sedative effect, folks. You are drugging yourself into sedation. This is why it may only take a little bit at the start, But over time, it's escalating. We've seen this. Low blood potassium, or low potassium in general, often occurs with metabolic alkalosis. Hypercalcemia from supplements is known to cause hypokalemia. So high blood calcium from supplements is known to cause low blood calcium. Here's the paper. You can go look at it. Low blood calcium can result in muscle weakness, fatigue, or apathy, which might also be related to a sedative-like effect. You just stop caring about stuff, so you feel more relaxed. Okay. We have some people, like Mikey talked about, he couldn't just quit the calcium. He could not just quit it, or things fell apart. He had to wean. So would you call that, what do people try to do with coffee? They try to wean. What do people try to do with drugs or alcohol? They try to wean. Does it usually work? Sometimes it works. What do people do with SSRIs? They try to wean. So signs of a drug-like effect is tolerance. Tolerance means having to take higher and higher amounts of a compound to get the same effect. Isn't that what we just talked about? Withdrawal symptoms. If you stop something suddenly, you feel worse. A chronic high calcium intake suppresses your parathyroid hormone. We talked about this. If your intake drops suddenly after all this suppression, calcium dysregulation can occur, so they can get symptoms from hypocalcemia. This is a known issue in Milk-Alkali syndrome. So when they try to give you fluids and they give you other drugs that pull the calcium out of your blood, they give you rebound hypocalcemia. So they give you a rebound effect. And then you go low calcium, then you have problems from low calcium because they've got to fight this high parathyroid hormone thing that's going on. And then we have the rebound gastric acid hypersecretion. We talked about this. Chronic use of calcium carbonate as an antacid, as in GERD, or just people taking mega doses because they think it's the answer to everything, is known to cause a rebound excessive acid production. This was known in the Milk-Alkali syndrome. So these are both Milk-Alkali syndrome things. Calcium carbonate is a big part of that, but it doesn't have to be there. It can be any alkali, and it could be, generally, it's going to be high doses of calcium, whether that's from milk or whether that's from supplements. Some of the advice being given to these people is that any symptom that pops up simply means they need more calcium. Does anything in health work that way? Constipation is a known side effect of calcium carbonate. In the hair analysis world, it is a classic sign of hypothyroidism. And hypercalcemia can cause a lack of muscle tone in the gut. The hypothyroid here is related to an excessive calcium to potassium ratio on hair testing. So taking too much calcium can cause high calcium. What does calcium also do? It depletes potassium. I just showed you that research. What would that cause? An excessively high calcium to potassium ratio. Another thing we've heard about is frequent urination. Classic sign of blood sugar issues. Remember how we went over calcium to magnesium and diabetes earlier? And it is a diuretic effect. Hypercalcemia has known diuretic problems, like peeing too much. Blood sugar issues on hair testing is related to an excess calcium to magnesium ratio. So too much calcium to not enough magnesium. We already went over this stuff. High-dose calcium carbonate is known to cause Milk-Alkali syndrome. This can lead to kidney effects that lead to increased urination, mimicking a diuretic effect. Polyuria, as in frequent urination, polydipsia, as in increased thirst, and nocturia, as in frequent nighttime urination. These are all things known to go along with the Milk-Alkali syndrome. Now, this is an important part. The diuretic effect would aggravate or worsen all types of crystallization and stone formation by concentrating the body fluids in general, right? If you want to, what's the term? When you reduce a sauce, right? You cook off the excess water. So you make the sauce thicker. The sauce is kind of like precipitate. It's like crystallizing. It's getting thicker, right? There's more likelihood of things clumping up in there. Well, what happens in your body? You start pushing too much calcium. You start peeing too much. You're losing fluids in your body. You're becoming kind of chronically dehydrated. There was actually a paper in there that mentioned the dehydration thing. So then what could you get? More oxalate stones, more urate stones, more kidney stones, more gallstones, and more calcification of soft tissues. Everything's getting, you've got more calcium there to crystallize. You've got more carbonate there to alkalize, and things precipitate more, crystallize more in an alkaline environment. Then you have potential dehydration or reduction of fluids, which then increases the ability for things to concentrate and crystallize. And this is that paper on potentially calcium being related to gout and other conditions. I already went over this zinc one. Okay, so now we're at the important part. Let me put this all on one page. Oh, it's not working the way I want it, but that's fine. We'll be here. So, after all of that, what are my calcium recommendations for people going forward based on what I know? Based on what I have seen and my precautions, I am much more interested in people continuing to live rather than their bone density. But why can't we fix both? We have proven, we just went over the niacin and we just went over the zeolite, and we have people proving via DEXA scans that they are slowly creeping out of osteoporosis. Okay, might they need some more calcium? Might some more calcium help them to do that faster? Sure, why not? They're already osteoporotic. They might need a little more calcium, but first we got to bring down the problematic calcium, which is them losing the calcium, which is the vitamin D supplements and the vitamin A toxicity and all stuff. So we tend to fix the high calcium problem first, the excess losing calcium problem first, before we start putting it back in. Okay? So first, you're going to shoot for at least 500 milligrams of calcium per day from food. Food. 500 milligrams of calcium per day or more. Remember, India and these other Asian countries were doing fine with 400, 500, 600. Okay? So, that's our minimum. Like when I say 50 grams of protein minimum a day, does that mean that's optimal? No, you can do more. 500 milligrams of calcium minimum from food. Hopefully you guys listening are smart enough to understand what the word minimum means, and you can go over that. So the stuff I've done in my little research so far, the Love Your Liver approved highest calcium foods would include, generally white beans are going to be higher in calcium than other beans. And the Great Northern beans here are the highest in calcium among the beans. Navy and cannellini beans kind of come next. Then there's these lupinis, which I've never had. Black-eyed peas or cowpeas are the last. Black-eyed peas I'm not a huge fan of anymore. I used to kind of like them. But they're not, I'm not saying they're high in vitamin A, but of all the beans out there, black-eyed peas have the most vitamin A of all the beans. They also have the most molybdenum. So you kind of, But generally I have been, actually I had probably I had a can worth of white beans last night with dinner. And they actually kind of taste, as Kelsey told me about, they kind of taste like chicken. They kind of have a meaty, like a chicken meaty taste to them. So anyway, those are the beans. So I'm suggesting if you want to get more calcium in your diet and you're already eating beans, switch from your black beans, switch from your pinto beans, switch to a white bean. Preferably Great Northern would be the best in calcium, okay? Next, the grains. If you're trying to get more calcium from your grains, I learned about this from internet searching finger millet. Okay. Finger millet per cup or per 100 grams is about as high in calcium as Great Northern beans. Okay. Finger millet is like the highest grain in calcium out there. I just ordered some from Amazon the other day because I just learned about it. So I just ordered that for me. Yes, the grain is kind of reddish. You want to get calcium, you might have to make a sacrifice there. I have no idea how I'm going to feel on it. I'm going to try it out, see how it goes. Okay, the other grains that are higher in calcium, teff and amaranth, are pretty good. Oats are pulling up the back. I'm not saying you have to stop eating oats at all. I'm just saying, like, oats, I think, are about a third as much calcium as finger millet is. Okay. And I don't know of any finger millet like flakes or rolled finger millet. I don't know. I just got into it. Okay. In terms of fruit, the only significant calcium fruit is figs. What did I do yesterday? And figs actually have so I think I remember I went to Trader Joe's and I bought their organic Turkish figs yesterday. A serving was 3 figs. 3 figs. Well, so I ended up having 6 because of how much I wanted. But out of 6 figs, I got 200 milligrams of calcium and about 500 milligrams of potassium. And you guys know I like potassium. So I got calcium and potassium from 6 figs. Now, if you're one of those people who's going to freak out because of the bug thing with figs, hey, that's up to you. I like figs. I love them. Actually, I was wondering why I used to like them, and maybe that was my calcium, my body talking to me about calcium. So I talked about nixtamalized corn products. Those are typically made with calcium hydroxide. It's kind of like the buffer thing where it reacts with them, and the hydroxide stuff is not there anymore. That's part of the reaction. And then the calcium is actually integrated into the corn product. So hominy grits or masa harina, I think it's called. Just read that article. Those are the things that you can find and then they tend to turn more white as they are nixtamalized, which means they're probably getting rid of vitamin A, which is a double good thing. Now, this last thing, winged beans. These are wild. They're actually like, think of a green bean that was kind of like, from what I've seen in the images, it's like it's got like the shape is like this. So if you were thinking of it going down like this, like think of my fingers, like it's got 2 wings going down it. There was something like 450 milligrams of calcium in a serving of winged beans. Winged beans are outrageously high in calcium. You cannot buy them anywhere as far as I know. Like you can't buy them grown. If you're a gardener, you're probably going to you can grow them yourself. You can get the seeds very easily, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people are selling them. Okay. So you can find the seeds. If you're a gardener, go do it. But you have just one tip. You're probably going to need to supplement your soil with calcium because these things suck calcium out of the soil like crazy to put so much calcium into themselves. Okay. Now, calcium supplementation, if you choose to do it, after all I've been over today, I'd stick with food. Am I endorsing dairy? No. But still, if somebody was like, well, I'm not going to eat white beans and I'm not going to do that. And you were like, well, do what you got to do, but that's not exactly the program. I mean, you do what you got to do, but we still know that calcium from food is infinitely safer than calcium supplements. That's what the research says. So calcium carbonate, I'm advising against calcium carbonate entirely. I cannot, in all conscience, recommend a total calcium intake. So that's food plus supplements over 1,000 milligrams a day based on the research that I have just gone over. There are some people out there taking more than 20 grams a day. If you're going to take calcium supplements, take them with food. You will absorb them better. But that could also be a double-edged sword. And we will have more information on calcium supplementation in the future. We have some very interesting things that we have discussed and talked about. And yeah, this all came about very recently. So yeah, so that's basically, let me get to any of the super chats. Don't send any new super chats, please. No new super chats. No new super chats. This is almost getting up on 4 hours. So yeah, please don't send any more super chats. I do want to get to the ones that are there. I probably have about 20 texts from my family that have been buzzing my phone the whole time. So I got to get out of here to that. So Val Zimmer, thanks for the super chat, Val. 11 phosphorus low in calcium. Currently, about 250 milligrams of calcium, 50 milligrams of phosphorus. 1 or 2 to 1. Do we worry about this? Where would one get more dietary calcium? Well, I hope I just answered that. And funny thing, you're mentioning phosphorus, because in my experience and what I've seen on, let me fix my little, is this not going up? There we go. Let me move that up a little bit. So, zinc. So you remember how I said zinc prevents calcium crystallizing and calcium depletes zinc? Well, I'm going to tell you something else about zinc and phosphorus. Zinc okay, so a low alkaline phosphatase, one of the liver enzymes, a low alkaline phosphatase actually tends to mean zinc deficiency, so phosphatase. And on the hair test, we can fix a low hair phosphorus by getting people zinc sufficient. So it appears that zinc really controls phosphorus in the body, and zinc may actually control a lot of the calcium calcification. So I would suggest that you work on the foods that I just talked about. I don't know about anybody claiming an ideal ratio for phosphorus in the human body other than that good old Ray Peat character, who I don't follow for anything ever at all. So anyway, you can work on more calcium in the diet. And so even just shifting, if the diet generally stayed the same, the meat and the grains and the beans and that kind of, and the fruit, then you can change that ratio by getting the calcium higher by picking higher calcium foods, which could drastically change what you're looking for. Yeah. So, okay. So sorry, I got to get to Sergio. Wait, let me see. So Hevar had the first super chat. Let me get back to that. Sorry, I got out of order. Hevar, you said, hey, Garrett, try magnesium lotion on the scalp to break up calcification. That should work great with your scalp massages. It worked amazingly for me. I'll consider it. I've got other things that I'm doing topically on the scalp. Kelsey came up with a spray that I've been using. But yeah, we could actually, I think I do have magnesium in it. I'm pretty sure I did do that. Yeah. But thank you. Yes, the magnesium lotion would be an option. The lotion on people's scalp is kind of like, it's okay. Putting magnesium on, well, first of all, I'm, 49. So fixing the momentum of my hair loss is not going to be as easy as it is for especially younger men, because mine is just set in longer. Like the fibrosis has been going on for more decades than a lot of the younger guys. So magnesium absolutely would help. Yes, absolutely could help by itself. The scalp massages and other stuff, you gotta break up the tissue. Again, gosh, fibrosis. Go search fibrosis and calcification, and you'll find that these processes go together. Go search fibrosis and calcification. So yeah, so could magnesium help with that? Yes. I do think that once the fibrosis gets, and Hevar was saying with the scalp massages, I do think that once the fibrosis gets deep enough that you do have to physically break up, if you will, move the scalp. Like you need to actually move the scalp and break it up, like you're trying to break it up. You can get an automatic head massager for that. You can do it with your fingers. Doing it with your hands for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, it sucks. I like the automatic head massager. So but that's a great suggestion. Yes. Going topically and the head massage and the other physical modalities that I'll talk about in the hair growth program. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay. Oh, yeah, I already said that one from John. Super chat from John. He said, not being 100% correct all the time is verboten. Yes, it is. It is absolutely against the rules. If anybody ever thinks that I'm their health guy and I'm ever wrong, they should immediately run somewhere else, find a new shiny object, and disregard everything they learned from me as soon as possible. That's what they should do. And if you didn't catch that with sarcasm, I'm sorry. Maybe this isn't the place for you. So Sergio said, thank you for the super chat. He says, I can only buy coconut charcoal, no hardwood in Romania. When I take it, it makes me pee like crazy. Is it the mold toxins? I use capsule ones. Love you. Well, thank you, Sergio. I know you're a big fan. One, you might be able to find bamboo, or does somebody here know I forget the name of the bamboo charcoal. Takasumi? I think it's Takasumi. I think it's Takasumi. It's bamboo charcoal. So look for bamboo if you can find it, either hardwood or bamboo, or if you can find some other form. I just coconut. Okay, so if you're getting frequent urination from charcoal, there's got to be something else in there. If that charcoal smelled like anything, you could be sure there's something still in that charcoal. Like I had some people report to me that coconut charcoal that they got, it smelled weird. Now, charcoal soaks up odors. So charcoal should not smell unless there's a ton of stuff in it. Like there's more stuff in it than the charcoal can absorb the smell of. And one of the ways that they get rid of all the coconut shells from all these, they make all these coconut products out of everything in the coconut. But then they got to do something with these shells and the moldy shells. And so they basically bake them until they're charcoal. Does that get rid of the mold toxins completely? I don't know. How do they store it after that? I don't know. So John Dickinson with another super chat. Thanks, John. When does the Nutrition Detective activated charcoal product cheap international shipping? We are working on we're working on improving all aspects of our ability to ship and get things to people. We're working on ways that people can benefit from promoting our products. We got all sorts of things in the works. Actually, I just started working with the gentleman who is helping me yesterday, and we have big plans, very big plans. He's a very interesting guy. He's very much like me. He's just in his field, which he's a brand strategist. And we're working on making Julie's life easier and making so we can reach more people with all of this. So yeah, figuring out international distribution is something we want to do. But even still, you guys need to know about this international shipping. It's not our fault necessarily. Like when we talk to, like when we're in America and we talk to shipping companies about shipping to a certain country, some of them just say, we don't do it. We just won't do it. Because customs either shuts it down or they just won't let it through. So we warn people when you're ordering international shipping, like if they take it, that if we, like, this is a common story with Julie. Julie will say, based on her past experience to somebody, I don't think it's going to get through. And the person will say, oh no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And Julie says, if we ship this to you and it doesn't go through, we're not refunding the money. We just told you that it's probably not going to go through, and you said do it anyway. Okay, so that's your risk. That's not our risk. That's your risk. And then it gets stopped, and then the person's like, well, it got stopped. And we're like, that's what we told you. We shipped it anyway. We told you what would happen if it got taken. Doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, then don't do that. This applies to all aspects of life. Don't ask for something to be shipped if we tell you it's not going to make it. And a lot of these big distributor shipping companies are starting to say there's places we don't even bother shipping to. We can't get it through. So getting it to be cheap and get through is a whole nother matter. Okay. So I hope that helps, Sergio. I don't know that that's the answer, but it at least is something. Okay, so we did that one. Val, we got to your question. Were there any other super chats, Joe? No, we got Val's. That's all. So I'm just going to end this with one just a tying it up. So remember, the link to all the references is Joe. It's in the chat, the live chat, and then Joe will put it as a comment in the info box below. It will be. I'll pin it as the pinned comment, so you can find it easily. What did we all learn through this whole thing? What did I learn? What am I trying to share with you guys? Number one, there's a certain minimum amount of calcium that people need that some people doing the general love your liver approach are not getting enough calcium. So for those of you who have been doing the love your liver program for a long time, and maybe you're not getting the results you wanted, or you had really great results and then they kind of turned into other little problems, there's a good possibility that it could be calcium deficiency. Okay, so we're going to fix that. This is not a hard thing to fix. It does not take grams and grams and 10 grams and 15 grams and 20 grams of calcium a day. It doesn't take that. If you're calcium deficient, your body is like a dry sponge waiting to soak up the calcium water. Like it will soak it up more than it ever would before because your body says, I want this. So you do not need to megadose. So, yes, calcium deficiency exists. Yes, we are going to address it. Yes, I apologize and I take responsibility for the fact that my obsession with fixing excessive calcium problems led to a bias that I was not letting myself see that calcium deficiency could be a growing problem because I just didn't know if it was going to happen or not. And now 7 years into this process, I'm going, okay, this can be happening. Can definitely be happening. Okay, I'm admitting that. Now we fix it, right? Isn't that what we do? Isn't that how any problem gets fixed? First, you admit the problem exists, and then you start working on the solution. That's what I'm doing. Some people are going to be very disappointed that I'm not doubling down and saying calcium's not important. I am saying calcium's important. And I went over multiple papers that said that. So I do not support much at all in the way of calcium supplementation, particularly calcium carbonate. I think that is a disaster waiting to happen. And some of you out there may want to prove me wrong. Go ahead. You can disregard every single paper that I posted. You can disregard the metabolic alkalosis. You can disregard the calcification. You can disregard the heart disease and the arthritis and the gallstones and the kidney stones. You can just throw it all out the window. And you can, some of you are going to say, well, if we don't have vitamin A toxicity, we don't have vitamin D supplements coming in, then it's probably not going to happen to us. FAFO. Go ahead. It's still calcium. It's still alkalinity. You're still taking drug level things of calcium and alkalinity, alkalosing agents, whatever, alkalinizing agents, whatever you want to call it. Food calcium is where it's at, as you saw in multiple studies where food calcium helped people avoid problems and supplemental calcium caused the problems. How many times did I have to go over that? I didn't know all that before, and now I do. So if you want to go and get more calcium in your diet, which for many of us is probably a good idea, get it in your diet. I gave you some options. You're still following the Love Your Liver framework. You just have, there's a smaller list of Love Your Liver type foods that are high in calcium. Okay. Now you can have the best of both worlds. You can fix your potential calcium deficiency, and you can stay on the framework that helped you get so much better. Now, for those of you, I went over high calcium symptoms in there. Basically, if you start eating a lot more calcium, even if it's food and you don't feel good, or maybe you're very early on in the Love Your Liver process, you may still have way too much calcium floating around your system because of the vitamin A toxicity and the vitamin D supplements and the copper toxicity. You may not be ready for more calcium in your diet, or definitely not supplements. So if you're that, just wait. Just like some people can't take zinc at the start very well. But then over time, as they get less toxic, they can take zinc. Maybe some people won't be able to eat a lot of calcium at the start, and their bodies, remember with that Milk-Alkali syndrome where people had a revulsion to milk. They were absolutely revolted by the thought of milk because their body's saying no to the calcium. If your body is, if you start getting like a lot of joint cracking and popping when you increase your calcium, or you start getting the frequent urination when you increase your calcium, like maybe you're not ready yet. If your blood sugar gets worse when you take more calcium, maybe you're not ready yet. Let's say you increase your dietary calcium and you notice different symptoms suddenly improving. Hey, that's a great sign. That's what we're after. That's our goal. Our goal is to get you better. The reason why I'm not hanging on to what people think my position on this was going to be is because my goal is to get people better, even if I get to say that I was incorrect. Who else does that out there? It shouldn't be rare. People should be after the truth. And I've been accused of like profit motive and all sorts of things. And here I am admitting that I was incorrect. But we're going to fix it through food. Calcium is like gasoline. Gasoline could be used for good. It can take you places. Gasoline can also be highly flammable and explosive. I'm trying to help you to not explode yourself. Okay? So, as Kelsey just said, that you will never decrystallize by adding more crystal precursor. Yes. So if you add too much calcium too early, you could slow your progress. You could definitely slow your progress, or you're going to need even more magnesium to decalcify. So you have, again, doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, then don't do that. So if you increase your calcium and you feel better, great. We're not talking about supplements. We're not talking about megagram doses. If you add some calcium foods and you don't feel as good, regardless of the high calcium foods you bring in, then don't do it yet. Could you start out with an excessive calcium problem, like leaking calcium out of your bones? Could you start with that problem and then eventually have it turn into a calcium deficiency? Yes, this could happen. As we get you better, your internal environment changes. And so we have to change with it. So just be aware, you may not feel good on calcium at the start, and you may feel better later on. If you're, let's say, an elderly lady who has like really low hair calcium, you might want to get on calcium right at the start. We're going to be figuring this out between me and my facilitators, Kelsey and Nathan. We're going to be figuring out how the hair test can tell us if people need calcium or not. We may even add some of the calcium blood tests to see what those can tell us. That's why I did that for the bile acids for a while. I added bile acids to everybody's tests. And I found out it didn't really help anything to figure out. It didn't help me to figure out anything. So I stopped testing them, because why run tests that don't give you any extra information? Could calcium blood tests give us some more information? Sure, why not? We don't know until we test it out and we start to watch patterns. Who do you think is better to watch those patterns happen than me? So that is what we got. Joe, you can start rolling the links. That is all we have. So nutritiondetective.com, that is our main website. That is where you can find the consultation packages. That's where you can find our store. That's where you can find the membership link to the Love Your Liver program. Then we have the Love Your Liver program, which if you want to have the direct link to there, that is the do-it-yourself program. I am going to be working on an article about calcium, integrating this stuff in there for the Love Your Liver people. But why do I put this out in the public? Because I want to help people. I'm not putting it behind a paywall. I'm putting this information right here for free. Okay, so, but the Love Your Liver program may have other stuff. I'm a little more willing to give a little more edgy advice inside the Love Your Liver program, because I know those people are interested, right? They have paid a fee showing they're interested and that they're invested. That's that word. So there's that. Next, we have our past live streams. So you can go on our YouTube channel, and there's the link that Joe's showing you if you want to see the past live streams. Now, just know if there's a live stream that doesn't show up under the streams link that Joe's showing you, a couple of them are not there because I had to edit them out so the Gestapo would not take my video down. You can always find all the videos on our Rumble channel. But if a video, you can't find it on the live link on YouTube, then look to the videos link and you can find it there. We have all 208 episodes, I believe, on YouTube. Yeah, that's the Rumble channel. Joe just posted the Rumble channel. We are there. This will be there probably tonight or tomorrow. I'm on Twitter X as NutriDetect. Boy, that place is falling apart quickly. Man, they're just algo feeding at this point. Episodes 53 and 71 of the Love Your Liver live stream. This is where you can get the basis on toxic bile paradigm. So when I was talking about bile today, toxic bile paradigm and calcium making bile more toxic to cells, like this is how that all relates. That's why I talk about bile. Your toxic bile is the root of all your chronic health issues. It's leaking into your blood and basically you're self-poisoning. So if you want to learn the basics on that, go to that. We have this is my old research forum where it was mainly me posting for myself. nutritionrestored.com/blog-forum. I will sometimes post articles I wrote there, here, or on Twitter. Yeah, testimonials are back there from way back when we first started the vitamin A detox stuff. Joe, anything else? Oh, the GLASP. So this is my GLASP. So all those studies you saw that were highlighted. So if you go to that link on GLASP, you can search for a term. You could type in calcium and it'll go through all the links that I've highlighted that contain the word calcium. So if you wanted to search for, you type in bile, type in magnesium. All the links that I've done that I've highlighted on GLASP can be found there. So yeah, it's a pretty big database by now. Consultations, if you would like to work with one of my health facilitators, Kelsey or Nathan, doing hair testing, doing blood testing, everything's still the same for now. That's the link you can do it. It's under the consultation. I think it's under consultation link on the website, but that's the direct link there. There's that. And then I'm trying to figure out how to make testing, the access to the guidance on the testing accessible to more people. I'm working on it. I don't know what I'm going to do about that yet. And then, oh yeah, this is today's Love Your Liver live stream. It is number 208. The good, the bad, and the ugly on calcium. When I say 4 years of Love Your Liver live streams, this is 208. 52 weeks in a year. 208 divided by 52 equals 4. We have put out an episode of the Love Your Liver live stream. Some weeks it wasn't, a couple of weeks it wasn't live, but I have not missed a week in 4 years of doing this. That is, that's that. So yay. You can tell I'm a real animated person, right? Anyway, that's what we've got for today. Hope you all enjoyed it. Again, I'm not changing any of my previous stances on calcium. I've just realized that it's more important to get it from food than I had realized before. Okay? So go back and watch it again if you need to. Plenty of research evidence in there to both warn you away from calcium supplements and to make sure you get enough of it from diet. I am Dr. Garrett Smith, also known as the nutrition detective around these here YouTube parts. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I hope you get what you need out of it. I hope I save some of you people from a heart attack. Seriously. I hope you can set aside whatever anger you have towards me and that you can realize that, oh crap, he might be right. And this might not be what we thought it was. I'm here trying to help you. I'm here saying, don't ignore the red flags that are trying to keep you from going off the cliff. That's what I'm saying. So, hope you all enjoyed that. I knew that was going to be a barn burner, a little less than 4 hours. I'm proud of myself. I'm glad this is done. I will see you all next week. Bye now.